Good evening, Donovan.
Good evening.
Hey, Justin, how's it going?
Good. How are you doing?
Really good.
Good.
Hey, Kevin.
Hey, good afternoon or evening.
You as well?
Jeez, I have to brush my hair here. Oh, I'm sorry, hair.
You making fun of mine?
No, my
Your hair's looking good, Kevin.
I was just saying to my daughter, I said, I feel like I'm from California. I have a sweatshirt on in September. And
I broke down and turned the heat on about an hour ago.
I know I did that last night.
Hello, Karen.
Yeah,
Yeah, so Dan logged in the council chamber computer for any public input
Right.
that might be, during the public hearing coming from City Hall.
yep.
So they would be the ones to bring into a speaking role if that occurs.
I see 0 people in there. So when you're saying he logged into that, who's in there? You?
I am, but there's another computer set on the dais.
Oh,
Did you- I didn't look. Is there it would be that, the one attendee we have.
Forest Lake Council Chambers.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So I'm just going to move it over to panelist right now.
Okay.
That way it's already in the meeting. So it's just one person right now, right?
No one's here. I'm just saying if.
Oh, gotcha. So what I'm seeing on the screen right now is it's pointed at the ceiling. So is there a way you can tip it down so that if we want to see an actual person, or would it be facing
I'll
if it's at the
put a chair- I'll
dais?
put a chair out. They can stand on a chair. I'll put a chair out. No.
Is it on the podium? I mean, is it on the podium or on the dais?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, the podium.
Okay, so if you stand at the podium, let's see what you look like. Yeah, okay, that'll work. It works. Yeah. It was pointed, it looks like it's pointed at the ceiling, but when you're standing at the podium, it'll work fine.
It's very commanding presence, sir.
Did you hear from Blake at all, Donovan? He said he didn't think he received a link. He was the top of my list, but I resent it to him. And I haven't gotten any response back from him at all. So I didn't know if he emailed you.
No, not about that.
Okay.
It looks like you moved the meeting to live. So anyone that's watching, we're just in a holding pattern until 7 o'clock when the meeting starts.
Hello, Andrea.
Hello,
How are you tonight?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. You are more toward the end of the agenda, so if you want to mute,
Perfect.
that might just, okay. Less collateral noise. Thank you.
Yep.
Hello, Dick. I see you as well.
Hi, good evening.
And you're first on our list of star guests.
Did you want me to speak now? Or what are we doing?
Yeah,
No,
Dick, we're just holding till 7 o'clock when we'll officially start the meeting. So we're just
Oh.
waiting for members of the public and our own commissioners to all join here. And then I'll call the meeting to order. We'll kind of zip through some standard stuff like roll call, pledge of allegiance, agenda approval, old meeting minutes, and then we'll get to yours.
Okay, thank you.
hello, Blake.
And Karen, I know Dennis Batty was going to be like approximately a half an hour late tonight. Did we hear from any other members?
I have not. Nope, only Dennis.
So it is 7 p.m. and I do see a quorum of commissioners here. So we'll call this Planning Commission meeting to order. It is a remote meeting. And so for those that are joining the Zoom call as guests for our public hearing or applicants for an application, we're going to ask that you turn your computer on mute so that we're not picking up your feedback until the point of the public hearings. And we'll give you instruction at that point in how we'll call you up then. Karen, can you please take a roll call vote?
Sure. I have Susan Young. Dennis Batty. Kevin Miller.
Here,
Mike Keen.
Here.
Justin Brink.
Here.
And Chair Langness.
Present. Thank you. For those able, we ask that you stand and join us in our nation's Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And next we have approval of the agenda. Commissioners, is there a motion?
make a motion.
All right.
Second.
Kevin moves, Commissioner Keen seconds. Is there any discussion on the agenda? Seeing none, Karen, can you please take a roll call vote?
Commissioner Keen.
Here.
Commissioner Brink.
Aye.
Commissioner Miller.
Aye.
And
And Chair Langness.
Aye, motion carries. We are on item number 5, approved Planning Commission meeting minutes from August 26, 2020. Commissioners, is there a motion or discussion on this?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you. Commissioner Keen moves. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Brink seconds. Is there discussion? Seeing none. Karen, can you please take a roll call vote?
Commissioner Miller.
Aye.
Commissioner Keen.
Aye.
Commissioner Brink.
Aye.
Chair Langness.
Aye, motion carries. For an item, oh, I believe that was Susan Young.
Correct. Commissioner Young. Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Young, we're just approving the meeting minutes and we're moving on to item number 6. We are at the Minnesota Lake Self-Storage Conditional Use Permit, hours of operation. This does have a public hearing for consideration of the conditional use permit. So the process that we'll use here will be that we will first have staff present their opinion. Commissioners can ask questions. We'll allow the applicant time to speak. Commissioners can then ask questions of the applicant. We'll then open the public hearing. And then after the public has commented, we'll bring it back to the commission for discussion and or consideration of a motion. So, Donovan, do you want to kick us off?
Certainly.
Thank
I'd
you.
like to present, Chair and members of the Planning Commission, I'd like to present the Minnesota Lake Self-Storage CUP hour of operation change request. As you probably recall, on June 24th, the Planning Commission approved a CUP to operate a self-storage units at this site. And the at that time, I'll show you on the, I'm sorry. Okay, at that time, during some of the initial discussions around the operating hours, the site plan for the self-storage units had about 80 storage units facing northward. Here's a snippet from this staff memo that shows that northern property line with the Gateway Green townhouses, you know, a little bit to the north there, with this drive aisle all throughout here. They're running the complete length of the property, and with that, at that time, the staff recommendation was for 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. Operating hours. Then, as in mid-June, when the owner shifted units either to the south, to the west, and removed the drive aisle, actually decreasing the overall number of units and removing all 80 from having any north storage door, and removing that drive aisle and retaining a approximately 30-foot wide buffer of trees. Staff said that in discussion with the owner that yes, I would support an earlier hour time, since we didn't have the main issue of having, you know, storage doors to the north, drive aisle, the up to 11-foot retaining wall, creating something of a canyon that have sound bouncing out of that area from, you know, asphalt, a stone or concrete wall, you know, a retaining wall made of stone, and of course lights that would be on the exterior building. So all that was removed. However, at that time, the owner, the applicant, Dick Biagini, who's on the call with us tonight, didn't make that formal, you know, request to change that. So when the June 24th approval occurred, I think I was just glad that, you know, it was the project was moving forward, and I didn't jump in at the time to say, hey, you know, to remind the owner that we had that discussion. So we're bringing up tonight. We did notice this is a public hearing, understanding that transparency, you know, has been a really important asset and facet of this review. So to remind you of what, you know, what the conditions were for the CUP related to, you know, no residential manager. Here it is, the hours operating from 8 to 9. And then a number of things related to other agency approvals. And but right now the staff recommendation is to grant that request to have the operating hours from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. Also, there was a letter submitted if you know, if I can read into the record at some point, maybe prior to the public hearing, but I'm happy to take any questions from the Planning Commission now.
Commissioners, questions on the staff report? Commissioner Miller?
Donovan, I have two questions. One is related to other storage facilities in Forest Lake. If you know what their operation hours are, as well as what is our start time in the mornings for contractors to begin work on houses if there's work that's being performed on houses.
The first one, I did not research that one. I don't know if it's exactly applicable in this case because we do have the neighboring residential. The other one I can think of is on 15th Avenue Southwest in that, you know, limited industrial zoning district. I don't know if that's a good comparison. And then it is 7 a.m. on weekdays for construction activities, you know, related to the home building and whatnot.
I believe, Donovan, we have several other mini storage sites that are adjacent to residential districts. I'm thinking of Hellberg's north on 61 with the residential immediately to its west, and then south of the high school, there's another mini storage with, I believe, residential on 2 or 3 sides of it.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Young?
McCulloch is the one that you're referring to south of high school, and I believe that they are open at 7 a.m. And Hallberg, that's where the Rotary stores their stuff, and I've been able to get in there almost 24 hours a day.
Other questions on the staff report? Commissioner Keen?
Yeah, I'm wondering how are they going to keep people out of there before 7 a.m.? I know they have the electronic gate snap, but are those programmed like they only allow you at 7 a.m. they open up and at 9 p.m. they close? And I mean, if you're in there, you can't get out, or how does that work?
I'll let the owner, Dick Biagini, answer that one.
Yeah, yeah, you are partly correct there. Our gates are electronically controlled. We are a mini storage that is staffing our property for security, which means we lock out all the cards of the owners, you know, till 7 o'clock in the morning, and then we lock them out again at 9 o'clock at night. And then the last thing that our staff employee would do is travel the mini storage, make sure no one's lingering or is in there. But we actually shut down all the electronics so no one can come and go after or before.
Commissioner King, go ahead.
Yeah, one more. That is, how many more people you think would be in there between the hours of 7 and 8? I mean, on an average day.
Oh, you know, I can tell you some of the users that are in my research and history with all around the town, pharmaceutical people that deliver samples and stuff to dentists. They come in at 7 in the morning. They'll load up their vans and they go on a week trip delivering all the medical stuff and samples. The stone. The stone we're looking at putting on, they actually buy their pallets and they live right behind. They would be somebody that might go in and grab a couple boxes of stone. Percentage, boy, I don't know, Commissioner. It not very high. People who, if you lived in Forest Lake and you know a typical mini storage is a 30-minute search perimeter of where you attract your clients, and say you had something in your mini storage on your way to work, you would stop in, grab it, and go on your way. I don't know when that would occur. I see very, very little of this, but my competition out there, as Susan stated, you know, there's a lot of them open at 6:30. I don't care about 6:30, and I'm not so sure. You know, once we publish our hours, we might shut down a little bit earlier. You know, 9 o'clock is max for us. So I don't see a lot of usage, but for the few competitive people that I would need, I don't want to have them say they can't come in at 8 o'clock. And 8 o'clock was kind of, you know, we had the garage doors facing all the areas, and when we conceded and redesigned and whatever, plus these are ICF units, which are soundproof. I don't see a lot of interference anywhere on that request, sir.
Thank you.
Right. Commissioners, other questions on the staff report? Seeing none. Dick, did you want to present anything additional beyond what Donovan has already stated?
No, I don't, Chair. I don't. Pretty much that's what we're doing, and that's what we were asking for. So I'm good with what we have presented tonight.
Great. Thank you. Commissioners, is there further questions of the applicant? We do have a public hearing, but before that, Donovan, could you read the applicable letters that were sent in to staff and distributed to commissioners earlier today regarding this?
Certainly. There was one letter received, to whom it may concern. I'm writing a letter in the event I cannot make the meeting tonight, September 9th, 2020. I'm writing to express my concern and stance against opening the mini storage an hour earlier to 7 a.m. I did a bit of research, and other mini storage facilities in the area open around 9 a.m. Why would a mini storage facility in the backyards of many residents open earlier than facilities out of town or industrial areas? This project has already had a significant impact on my home value, Realtor estimates about a $50,000 hit to my home value. And I feel allowing even more in favor of the mini storage facility as opposed to taking the input of the residents of Forest Lake would be a mistake. The meeting notes state that the change to the hours is in response to the storage buildings being flipped from the north facing to south facing on the north end of the development. What about the homes on the west end? Yes, there are arborvitae being planted with no size indicated yet, but the sound of anyone making noise will travel east and west down the rows of the storage units directly to our yards. I feel opening an hour earlier would result in an even bigger impact than this project already has had. We are a young family with a 2-year-old with enough on our plates already. The last thing we need is mini storage noise every day at 7 a.m. This used to be an incredibly quiet area with a forest and field. Looking out my back window now, I see all the trees laid in piles and lights from the apartment complex to the north. I'm asking the Planning Commission to deny the movement to expand operating hours. Please put yourselves in our shoes and take this consideration seriously. Thank you. The Liticote family in Forest Lake, Minnesota.
All right, and I believe that was the only one. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
All right, we will move to open the public hearing at 7:16. And we'll start with anyone that is physically at City Hall. And then we will move into those that are online that may wish to add any comments here. When you add comments in either location, we're going to ask that you state your name and address so that we have that for the record. And then state your comments. If you're trying to speak and you need to get in or bumped in from staff, raise your hand or send a message and staff will work with you. So Donovan, is there anyone at City Hall that is interested in this item?
There is no one at City Hall at the present time.
All right, thank you. Karen, is there anyone that's indicated that they wish to speak to this item?
Yes, just a moment here. I am moving Sharon in as a panelist.
All right, thank you. I see Sharon is in. Sharon, you'll need to unmute your,
Yep.
and then just state your name and address for the record if you missed that part, and then go ahead and you can add your comments.
Okay. My name is Sharon Kanabi. I live at 22095 Ethan Court, Forest Lake, Minnesota. I live on the west side of this property. And in the planning agenda that was put together by Donovan, they mentioned changing the hours to 7 a.m. from 8 a.m. because of the north side, but nothing is referencing the west side. We sit up, us 3 houses on the west side sit up on a hill. So no matter whether there is doors opening on the west side or anything, even if there is or isn't, we will still look down onto that property. I find it kind of crazy that we weren't even referenced on the west side. Only the north side was referenced to accommodate them, but not us. So that, take that into consideration. It's not even, they don't even care what we say or do or our opinions on it. I also looked up local hours of storage units. Gopher State Storage in Forest Lake opens at 8 a.m. and close at 8 a.m. Monday through Friday. Halberg's Mini Storage in Forest Lake opens at 8 a.m. and closes at 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. Forest Lake Mini Storage in Forest Lake opens at 9 a.m. and closes at 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. They are closed Saturday and Sundays. Freeway Mini Storage in Columbus opens at 10 a.m. and close at 4 p.m. Acorn Mini Storage in Blaine, I know it's not in Forest Lake, but comparable, they open at 10 a.m. and close at 6 p.m. North Metro Storage in Ham Lake opens at 9 a.m. and closes at 5 p.m. Stuff It Moving and Storage in Lino Lakes opens at 9 a.m. and close at 9 p.m. Evergreen Self-Storage in Columbus and Forest Lake is the only other one I saw that opens at 7 a.m. Public Storage in Hugo, 9:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. So not a lot of places open at 7 a.m. And when it's sitting in my backyard, for me to view it at 7 a.m., what's the difference between 7 and 8 a.m.? No one, and like he says, the competition he's trying to beat, what's 7 to 8 a.m.? It's just bothersome that we're even having to fight this 1 hour when it's sitting in a residential community. I hope you guys take that into consideration as if it was going in your backyard. So that's about it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for the comments, Sharon. Karen, do we have anyone else queued up?
I have 3 other people, but no one raising their hand.
Okay. Can we mute our city administrator? I think he's causing some background noise. Thank you. We'll give it about 30 seconds here if anyone else wants to raise their hand, and then we'll close this public hearing and bring it back to the commission. Do we still have no one? Karen? Or Donovan? No one walked in City Hall?
No
All right,
one's-
we will close the public hearing at 7:22 and bring it back to commissioners for consideration and or a motion. Commissioners? Commissioner Brink.
Just in regards to hours, as I was listening to when some of these places do open, it seems that the times are coming right from a Google search. I might be wrong, but going to these websites and seeing that Hallberg has access hours at 6:30 a.m. Forest Lake Mini Storage says 24/7 access, and this is just going to the actual websites. It looks like the hours do vary from what I'm seeing if you were to do a actual Google search. I just wanted to put that out there, something I noticed.
All right. Other comments? Commissioner Young?
I think that the difference in hours is whether or not it's accessed during a certain hours or whether there's going to be somebody on site to rent you a new unit during those quote open hours.
Right.
I understand the concerns of the folks that have spoken tonight. I also understand that going into the mini storage, you are driving a car down a driveway and you are opening a garage door and accessing the stuff in your garage, just like their neighbors to either side of them might do at 7 a.m. to go to work, open the garage door, or in the wintertime, run the snow blower to be able to get out their driveway or whatever. I don't believe that it is unreasonable for this facility to be accessible by the folks that are renting units, essentially garage units, at 7 a.m. But I'd like to hear the opinions of the rest of the Planning Commission members.
Commissioners? Commissioner Keen?
Yeah, I kind of agree on that, what Commissioner Young was saying. How many people are going to be there between 7 and 8? They're going to come in with their truck, if they're, say they own a construction company, pick up a few items and leave. I can't see more than a couple vehicles, 2-3 vehicles coming in at that time. And most people are at work or have already left for work by 7 in the morning. I don't think they're being unreasonable at all by asking for the 7 o'clock start. That's my opinion.
Commissioners, other comments? Commissioner Young, I tend to be on the side of, had this been 7 o'clock in the presentation previous to today, I don't think it would have swayed my opinion at that point. And I would have supported it. I don't think timing was an issue as we negotiated through and made a better project for both the neighbors and for the applicant. And so for me, I can support 7 a.m. I think that any excessive noise can be mitigated through our noise ordinances if it becomes necessary there, but I would be surprised if it was much beyond that of a neighbor's garage potentially. So, Commissioner Keen.
One more comment. I know it was mentioned tonight that, you know, some of the residents in the area didn't have a voice in this all this time. And I think I speak for most of the commissioners and city personnel here, and even Mr. Biagini. We spent many, many hours on this project. It's time to move on. And this is just one more question that needs to be answered. And that's it. But I mean, everybody had a chance many, many times, numerous times, to voice their opinion.
Other commissioners, discussion or motion? Commissioner Miller.
I would just go ahead and take the staff recommendations and make a motion to allow the Minnesota Lakes mini storage operation hours to change from 8 a.m. to 7 a.m. till 9 p.m.
There's been a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Miller moves. Commissioner Brink seconds. Is there discussion on the motion? Seeing none. Karen, can you please take a roll call vote?
Commissioner Young,
Aye.
Commissioner Miller,
Aye.
Commissioner Keen,
Aye.
Commissioner Brink,
Aye.
Chair Langness.
Aye, motion carries. We're on to item number 7, Forest Hills Farms First Edition. It is a dock variance. This does have a public hearing as well in relation to considering this variance. We will first have the staff report and then commissioners can ask questions on the report, and then we'll bring up Blake Roberts, who I believe is representing the Homeowners Association, and anyone else he has with him. Commissioners can ask questions of the HOA, and then we will open up, or actually then we'll have Donovan read some letters that we received in email form earlier today, submitted, and then we'll open up the public hearing and eventually bring it back to commissioners for discussion and or consideration. Donovan, do you want to kick us off, please?
Certainly. I'd like to, Chair and members of the Planning Commission, I'd like to present the variance application for an increase in Forest Hills Farm First Edition boat slips. This is an application, the type of application that the Planning Commission has not reviewed yet. Involves the Shoreland Overlay District rules on common lots and the common dock that is allowed by code to be placed on common lots. The location of Forest Hills Farm First Edition is over here in the southeast corner of Third Lake. And Forest Hills Farm currently consists of 23 lots here. It's directly north of Highway 97 and just a little bit west of North Shore Trail there. So, and then these 23 lots share an outlot A here with the boat dock for boating and, you know, a pretty long length of shoreline as well. And there's a paved trail that comes down here to access that area. The approval for this boat dock came in 2007 during the final plat review, and the original dock looked like this. This was approved, and this was with the 18 slips on it, which is currently the number. But also part of that original approval was that there were 51 lots total for this development. So you had, and then as part of the development agreement, certain lots were assigned dock rights. So each of these numbers adding up to 18 here, shown in these dispersed across these 51 lots, were indicated a boat slip assigned to that lot. And then it was, of course, sold, and then the owner received a slip for their use. The way in which the boat slips are calculated within the zoning code is a pretty complex calculation involving lake area and lake perimeter, and then percentage of additional shoreline above the minimum lot widths. And so that calculation yielded, exactly 18.4 slips, which of course, that is what the project was approved for. In 2012, the developer, actually realizing that the Forest Hills Farm Second Edition wasn't going to be built anytime soon, and I believe he was selling it at that point, or he then allocated all those lots back to this first edition. So then that figure I showed you that had the lots dispersed across 51 lots was then changed to 18 lots. There is the document, I'm sorry. Well, then of course in the development agreement, there were this spelled out that the dock would only have 18 slips and a length of 210 feet. And if this, if any dock extension would involve, if it was allowed, would involve an amendment of that development agreement, which the city council would consider. There is a declarations, covenants, and restrictions document that all property owners sign. And this one in very clear terms states that that the total number of boat slips which governmental authorities will permit to be maintained is not sufficient to enable each owner to have a boat slip assigned to that owner. So that's clear in section 10.2. In section 10.8, in all caps, actually in the original document, it states, slip owners understand and acknowledge that there are no assurances regarding any future authorization of boat slips by the applicable government authorities. And if such authorization is not forthcoming, ownership of a boat slip will not guarantee a slip owner any right to the slip owner's boat. So that was clear both in the development agreement, then with this ECR document, that this 18 was what was permitted, and any owners, anyone purchasing a lot, would also understand that there's no real expectation that that situation would change. This, of course, is a variance application, and the zoning code provides for this pathway when the strict enforcement of the zoning code would cause practical difficulties because of the circumstances unique to the individual property under consideration. And it is also that the practical difficulties means that the property owner proposes to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by the zoning code. And also, this is echoed in Minnesota state statute, that variances should only be permitted when they're in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the ordinance and when the variances are consistent with the comprehensive plan. I also provided for Plan Commission members the DNR variance guidance, which does echo that statement. It also talks about the need for findings of fact. And these findings of fact are to be part of any motion if the Plan Commission member chooses to make it, either for a permission approval of the variance or denial of the variance. And the Shoreland Overlay District was adopted in 1999, and it was a real policy change for the city in order to adopt these rules to preserve and enhance surface waters, conserve the economic and natural environmental values of shorelands, and provide for the wise use of waters and related land resources. The application includes a narrative, and there's in the staff memo, I make some points to offer different perspective on some of the statements that were made. And I think the one that really stands out to me is that is the assertion that the slip allotment was based on DNR regulations that previously were not required by all other similar developments on Forest Lake. That is true, but it's also a matter of that for over 120 years, there was lot division, development, cabins, resorts all along Forest Lake. And by the time 2007 came around, there were only a handful of lots. Maybe I can think of maybe two or three at the time, where these standards would even apply, where you'd have a length of shoreline that would permit more than the allotted, 4 slips on a single property, or starting with 6 for one of these common area lots, and then have the extra shoreline to permit more. And then and on all the projects that the narrative mentions, all were from a period of 1982 to 94, which precede the shoreline rules, and which one could argue that this type of development was a reason why these more restrictive rules were applied to limit the number of slips on the on properties. A primary thing about variances is that there is the unique circumstances of the property, and staff couldn't see the practical difficulty with the current number of dock slips. And the narrative mentions that there's an inconvenience of trailing a boat for use, which is an inconvenience, I understand, but it's shared by hundreds of other boat users on the lake annually. And then there's also the economic consideration that's mentioned, that the lack of slips for a particular property reduces its market value, according to the narrative. And the zoning code specifically says that economic considerations alone can't be the basis of a practical difficulty. And by mentioning those number of projects where they don't conform to the current rules, it's almost as if the narrative was arguing for a reversal of that policy decision that City Council made in 1999, and a reversion back to the more loose control with the number of boat slips that we can see in some of these non-conforming properties that are mentioned in the narrative. And we did receive a statement from the DNR that does state that the shoreline standards are put in place to protect public waters for all residents of the state. In this case, the controlled access lot provisions are intended to limit surface water crowding, noise, and help limit the amount of shore erosion from boat wakes by limiting the number of boats on a lake. Also, the developer hasn't shown that there are any practical difficulties to justify the variance request. Specifically, what are the unique circumstances? What is unique about this parcel of land that doesn't allow the standard to be met? The land is similar in nature to other shoreland areas, and there is nothing limiting or preventing compliance with the standard other than the developer's desire to achieve a higher sales price for lots with mooring spaces. And also there's a mention about the other projects that were mentioned in the application narrative. I did follow up with the DNR supervisor, Jack Gleason, to inform that those were all permitted prior to the Shoreland Overlay District rules being adopted. So at this point, it is the staff recommendation for denial of the application for to increase the boat slips from 18 to 24 based on the following findings of fact. The application did not identify a specific condition or circumstance unique to the subject parcel that would result in a practical difficulty as opposed to a mere inconvenience to the owners if the dock was not expanded. Reasonable uses are already permitted by the zoning code without a dock extension. The application failed to demonstrate that the variance would be consistent with the spirit and intent of this chapter and with the comprehensive plan. Forest Hills Farm First Edition Declaration of Covenants, Conditions, and Restrictions document explicitly states that the number of slips is limited and any property owner shall not expect the number of slips to change. By agreeing to be bound by the CCR document at the time of property purchase, purchaser of a lot without an assigned boat slip shows the circumstance in which the property does not have an assigned boat slip. The proposed boat slip would result in an unreasonably long dock, extending significantly longer than any other dock on the lake, which alters the essential character of the locality. I would like to show the boat plan that was submitted to the city with 23 lots. The applicant says this may not, this is not something they're wedded to as a plan, but this does accommodate 23 lots, and because of the shallowness of the water, I don't see many other options if staying within the boundaries of Outlot A and allowing it. So this linear length is 380 feet. And if you measure this extent, the furthest extent of the dock to the shoreline, it's about 300 feet. And that, comparably, the longest docks on the lake would be at Aqua, the former Aqua restaurant, Third Gear restaurant, and the Yearboat Club at Lakeside Memorial Park, which are approximately 200 feet long. And so this would be the longest dock on the lake that is being proposed, and if this variance is granted. With that, I'm happy to take any questions from the Planning Commission.
Commissioners, are there questions on the staff report? I'm not seeing any. Blake Roberts, did you want to jump in and add anything? And do you have someone else with you that you want to introduce as well?
Yes, thank you, commissioners, for your time here tonight. I can speak to a number of those points, but first I want to have my attorney, Patrick Dorn from Miller and Stevens, start out with the narrative of what Donovan had just spoke to.
Right. Good evening. Can everybody hear me okay?
We can hear you. Yep.
Great. Good evening, Chair, members of the commission. As Mr. Roberts said, my name is Patrick Doran. I'm an attorney just up the street at Miller and Stevens, here representing the HOA. I just wanted to respond on behalf of the HOA to some of the items that are listed in staff's agenda packet, as well as additional points related to the practical difficulties test that the commission is to consider for a variance request. First, I think there's just a slight misstatement of the law as it relates to using the property in a reasonable manner. Again, the HOA is just merely requesting the addition of 5 boat slips to their common dock. And I'll get to the actual dock issue here in a second, but for the purposes of this first prong, the reasonable manner prong, I think the HOA believes, and I believe, that the request for 5 additional slips would constitute a reasonable use of land considering the neighboring communities. That's in large part the reason that it was listed in Mr. Roberts' cover letter, the neighboring communities, that adding these 5 additional slips with the amount of lakeshore property that is part of the outlot, we're using the land, or the HOA is requesting to use the land in a reasonable manner. And so while I would agree with staff that the past use of the land is also reasonable, that's not what the commission is supposed to address. It's whether or not the request being made by the applicant is reasonable. It has nothing to do with the past use. I think we can all agree that the past use was reasonable. They're swimming. The 18 boats have generally been okay. Nobody disagrees with that, but that's not what the commission is supposed to look at. What the law says is that the request itself is a request to use the land in a reasonable manner. And so I believe that by just asking for 5 slips, and I think the HOA would agree, and Mr. Roberts on behalf of the HOA would agree, that the request for 5 slips is a request to use the land in a reasonable manner. So I think Mr. Hart's response, or staff's response to that part of the cover letter, that since 2008, Forest Hills Farm residents without boat slips have had the ability to use the subject property in a reasonable manner. That's not what the commission is supposed to be looking at. It's what the request is. In addition to the list of communities and their slop allotment that was included in the cover letter, Aqua, back in 2017, now Third Gear, made a similar request to this body, asking for 4 additional slips, increasing their slip allotment from 20 to 24, and requesting that an additional 6 of those slips be used for overnight boat parking, increasing that allotment from 4 to 10. It's the same request that Forest Hills Farm is making today. It's just a slightly different vehicle that was a conditional use permit based on the zoning for the area, and this is a variance request based on the statute that's laid out in the staff report. It's the same request though. It's just a different vehicle, a different vessel, if you will. DNR didn't have an issue with that request, and neither did staff, and that conditional use permit increasing Aqua slips from 20 to 24 was granted well after this law became into effect for the shoreland overlay. So I just wanted to make that point, that while staff has recommended to deny this request, it had in the recent past recommended to approve an almost identical request. In addition to the issues laid out in the application cover letter, the owners that are now living at or in the HOA or at the property are simply at the whim of the developer and what was determined at the time the development agreement was entered into. I know in Mr. Roberts' experience, he didn't buy his lot from the developer. He never saw the development agreement. He never signed off on anything that said there's no expectation. Much of what Mr. Hart was talking about related to the development agreement, that wasn't put in front of some of the owners. I know Mr. Roberts can just speak for himself, but I know that was an issue as well. And to that point, the circumstance is different, obviously, now after the shoreland overlay was signed into law, as opposed to 1982. I think Mr. Hart said 1982 to 1994, when a lot of these lots were being approved to have slips that corresponded with particular property owners. And so, in terms of a practical manner, or a manner that's commonly associated with nearby lake lots, I would think that the HOA's request is reasonable considering all of the circumstances. The applicant also doesn't believe that this variance would alter the essential character of the locality. Again, this is just 5 slips to a common dock area. I don't need to explain to this body the number of docks and slips that are already on the lake. and how 5 slips would affect that number. And so the HOA and myself believe that if the variance is granted, the essential character of the locality is not going to be altered. But I do want to take this opportunity to touch on a few more items related to that related to the agenda packet on this point. This 380-foot dock that Mr. Hart spoke about was not included in the initial application. That proposed dock was actually part of a discussion between the developer a while ago and Mr. Hart. And at that time, Mr. Hart was in support of what Forest Hills Farms was trying to do and add these slips. And so I think you could, if you looked at Mr. Hart's rendering that he pulled up, it said, number 3 or idea number 3. I can't exactly remember what the word was, but there were a number of different proposals. Mr. Hart was working directly with Forest Hills Farms to figure out a way to accomplish this. Now, I don't know why Mr. Hart's changed his opinion since those meetings, but what I do know is that the applicant is willing to work with the city and the neighbors, because I know that was a concern of some of the neighbors. I suspect Mr. Hart is going to get into those letters. The vast majority of the issues is with the 380-foot dock. I'm not saying that those issues are unreasonable to bring up. But as Mr. Hart mentioned, the applicant is not married to the 380-foot dock. In fact, the applicant is not the one who suggested the 380-foot dock. That was Mr. Hart. Staff put that in the packet without consulting the applicant. So the goal at this point was to get the approval for the 5 additional slips and then work with the cities and the neighboring community to figure out what that would look like. And ultimately, if there's issues that arise at that time, then everybody can readdress the situation. Like I said, the vast majority of the negative feedback from the community as it related to the application was related to that dock. It's something that I think, as Mr. Hart pointed out, it would be new for the lake if that was the case, if it was necessary that a 380-foot dock was required. But I think that the applicant and the city can come up with alternatives that would allow for the 5 slips that would make it so the neighboring community was not affected. It wouldn't alter the character of the locality, and the neighbors would be happy with their visual, looking out onto the lake and not having to see the dock out there. John and Pam Swenson, I think Mr. Hart's going to talk about, they said at the end of their letter, they're fine with the 23 slips so long as there's no 380-foot dock, or at least it's moved proportionally in terms of the extension to the north. I don't know how feasible that is. It just always depends on water level and things like that. So again, I think that's something that everybody can figure out. I know Jim Harley noted he was fine with the 5 additional slips. He does not believe 5 additional slips would be a hardship to the lake, nearby residences, or himself. And then he goes on to compare what Forest Hills Farm is requesting to Tim's Marina. In DNR's letter, DNR takes the position that not having these 5 slips limit the number of boats on the lake. I think that's a bit disingenuous. I think Mr. Hart kind of admitted that himself when he said there's hundreds of boats that get trailered into the lake. It's just I don't think having 5 additional slips is going to increase traffic or is going to create some sort of notable effect on the lake. Mr. Hart said hundreds of other boat users trailer boats into the lake. That's just something I just quoted from when he was speaking. So I think that's a bit disingenuous to say that these 5 slips are going to have some sort of major effect on the lake itself. Not allowing the 5 slips or allowing the 5 slips is going to just have minimal impact on the boat traffic, wakes. There's thousands of slips already on the lake. This is just in addition to the fact that DNR had no problem with Aqua Third Gear increasing their slips from 20 to 24, nearly an identical request to this one. And then DNR makes no other argument besides asking the commission to consider all the factors and consider the application You know, and they don't really go into why Forest Hills Farm is treated differently than all these other communities, merely because the development was created at a different time. You know, and lastly, I do think it is important that the community tries to minimize boats traveling from lakes to lakes in Minnesota. That, I think, was Mr. Roberts' intention on talking about trailering boats. It wasn't so much as an inconvenience. I think lots of boat owners, whether they own a slip on a particular lake or not, will take their boats and take them up north or from lake to lake around the community. It's just a lot easier to spread invasive species that way. And while not much of a factor in the request, I think Mr. Roberts just kind of wanted to clear that up, that it was more of a concern about traveling from lake to lake. If somebody doesn't have a slip on Forest Lake, where their boat is mostly going to be contained to that one lake, there is that increased chance of transferring invasive species from lake to lake, increasing traffic slightly. Again, I don't think it's entirely relevant to the request, but I think we just wanted to clear that up on why that was included in there. And then just lastly, as a general note, I think the applicant would disagree with Mr. Hart and staff's ultimate conclusion that granting the variance will cause, quote, an intensification of the use of the lake. I think that, again, is a bit of a hyperbole. We're talking about 5 slips. You know, he often points to the 380-foot dock as a reason why it's altering the character of the locality. Again, that's something that he put in there and not the applicant. You know, I'm not here to argue with staff. I think staff raises a number of concerns. I just want to be clear that the applicant wasn't the one that, at least at this time, suggested the 380-foot dock. That was a conversation between the developer and Mr. Hart when Mr. Hart was on board with what Forest Hills Farms was trying to do. Everybody agrees that the lake is the city's most valuable asset and precious resource. Granting the variance allows certain citizens of the city to use the lake in a manner consistent with the locality, and I think that's important. And it's a great way to bring people to the city to show prospective or current residents the value that the lake brings to the area. The ultimate goal of the applicant is to get the approval for the variance while maintaining or even improving the dock situation with the help of all parties, whether it's the visual aspect of any dock that's protruding from the property or the safety aspects of the boat traffic nearby. Maybe we can possibly think of ways to improve the situation while allowing the variance to be granted. I think this might be a good opportunity to just take a look at it, everybody together. And so with that being said, Mr. Roberts and I will field any additional questions the commission and chair might have if he doesn't have anything to add. And thanks again, everybody, for your time.
Thank you. Blake Roberts, did you have additional comments?
At this point, I really don't. I would, you know, whatever questions that the rest of the commission would have. I would add, though, that initially when the HOA started discussing this possibility, I did talk with staff and Donovan a number of times, and at the time, the first thought would be to do a zoning text amendment. That way, as Donovan was very supportive of that, to get the rest of the properties in compliance. Currently, the rest of the properties that I pointed out in the application are not in compliance. And I understand that that is something that happened before the DNR regulations came in more strict, but the fact is it's still there. And so early on, Donovan was very supportive of that, thinking that this would be a great way to get everyone in compliance to what the new regulations are, which clearly, if you look at some of those numbers, the amount of slips versus Lakeshore, where we're at, it way surpasses what most of the similar properties have on the lake. So that's how this thing got started. I understand that Donovan probably did get some feedback from the DNR that maybe changed his opinion on that. But early on in the conversations with the mayor, city administrator, and that it was more to try to get everyone in compliant with what's going on in the lake. So Probably have more to add and can field any questions, but that's what I have at this point.
All right, thank you. Commissioners, are there questions of the applicant? Commissioner Keen.
Mr. Roberts, how much property does that development own? How much lakeshore do they own? Roughly. 200-300.
Well, so you cut out just a little bit there at the mic at the, but the lakeshore that currently owned is 348 feet of lakeshore.
And you have one dock.
Correct, one dock.
And my opinion is I've been on this lake for 29 years and I see homes with a dock and they have 3, 4, 5 boats, personal watercraft, canoes, all on one dock for one house. Have you seen that on the lake also?
I have. I've grown up on the lake. Yeah, and it was rare. You might see a 100-foot piece of lakeshore, maybe 200, but there's not many people that have 348 feet of lakeshore.
Right.
Other questions of the applicant, commissioners?
No. One more.
Commissioner Keen.
And you're willing to work with the neighbors and the city as far as the actual configuration of the dock, if it goes out 20 feet and then north or whatever. It doesn't have to be the pictures that we saw today. You're willing to work with everybody to make that work.
Correct. And when we first brought this up a year and a half ago or so, looking at way not to intrude on anyone's sight lines and that, we had a survey done of the property to make sure that we were within those lines and not sticking out past that point. You know, you can look at different things that have gone through the state where there's battles going on where property owners decide it gets caught up in the legals where you can go straight across, straight out of your land and go someone else's sight lines. And there's battles going on all the way. We wanted to be neighborly and try to add some additional dock, add the additional slips, and still stay within our sight lines and not encroach on anyone else's.
Commissioner Young.
There are 51 lots in that subdivision. At the present time, that there are 18 slips. And I remember when the subdivision was brought forward. And there was a very intentional limitation of the number of slips. One of the challenges for a planning commission is that the decisions that they make have tails, have effects afterwards and sets very strong precedents. So I understand that today the HOA is looking for 4. And again, I remember very, very clearly when those were being marketed, because they're really close to me, that there was a strong push to buy certain lots now, because if you want to dock a boat, buy it now because there won't be any more of these available. My concern is that today it's 4. 4 years from now, we need another 7 or 8. 6 years from now, we need another 7 or 8. And then there's going to be Forest Hills 2. And then there's the development on the other side. Is the HOA willing to make a commitment that if they receive these 4, there will be no more dock slippages requested for either Forest Lake 1 or Forest Lake 2?
So that's a good question, Susan. So the second edition is completely divorced now from 1. The developer lost that, sold it, whatever. There is no connection at all anymore with that second edition to the first edition. There's 23 lots in edition 1. That's why we're requesting 23 slips. So I don't even know how you could even join those back together because it's completely separate ownership. And not speaking for the rest of my neighbors, but I can't see where they would even entertain the thought of trying to bring those back together and connect them where they would have the same kind of access to the lake that the first edition has.
Blake, if it's Patrick here, if you don't mind me jumping in just real quick on something that Commissioner Young brought up. In terms of precedent, I agree. I think the commission might have set some sort of precedent with Aqua's request back in 2017. But the beauty of a governmental body such as this is that each request requires appearing in front of the commissioners again to make that request. And so the commission, I agree with Mr. Roberts that I don't think that that is even something that's even in the realm of possibility anytime in the near future because of the separation of edition 1 and edition 2. But nonetheless, even if it was 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, 100 years, whenever that time arose, they would have to come back before this body, and this body can turn them down. And they could say, look, we told you back in 2020, we were only going to give you the slips to meet the number of property owners in edition 1. And we told you, we wrote very clearly in our response to granting the application that was the case. And so here we are. So I think that's the purpose of a governing body, is to require the applicant to come back in front of it and ask for permission again. And so the commission is always going to have that control.
Thank you. You made my point very, very nicely. I do appreciate that. I'm sure that you understand the difference between a conditional use permit and a variance. So bringing up a conditional use permit is really not your best argument. Second, the city and the planning commission were very, very clear with the number of slips that were to be part of Forest Lake 1 and 2. The slips that were previously part of 2 have now been amalgamated into 1. And it was very, very clear and was required to be in the covenants for each individual property that this is the total number of slips and there shall not be more. And so it was very kind of you to make that point, that if the city were to say that, that they would mean it, and that there would not be an expectation that someone would come back and say, well, we need a few more slips now. This planning commission has seen that setting a precedent over and over and over again with variances, whether they are shoreline variances, whether they are side slip variances, whether they are, well, we really, really need to be able to have our garage in the front instead of in the back. So variances do become precedent setting, because otherwise the planning commission is accused of being arbitrary and capricious when we say, yes, you can have one, but you in a similar situation cannot. So this is not just 4 slips on Forest Lake. It really is a bit more. I guess if those are divorced, planning commission members, we really need to think about what is going to be requested if there is a development at the other property. And we need to sort of put our future look on. And as we can consider this variance, I can understand why you really want more slips. I get that. I know that Donovan understands the concept of grandfathering, so that even if the zoning text change were made, we wouldn't be able to say to those other properties, you got to get rid of your boat slips, because that really would be a taking that I'm not sure the city would be allowed to do. And so I don't think that particular that wouldn't have gotten us other compliance. And I realize that the folks that live on the lake truly do believe that the lake is the single greatest asset of Forest Lake, of the city of Forest Lake. And I've had this discussion several times, but I think it is significant hyperbole to say that for someone who does not live on the lake or near it or boat or fish, that everybody believes that that is the single greatest attribute of Forest Lake. Blake, are you willing to commit that there would be no more requests for slips?
Susan, I don't, maybe Donovan can clarify this, but I don't think that second edition at this point has any rights or ownership to that lakeshore. My understanding is the current HOA, which consists of the 23 lots, is the only one that has ownership to that 348 feet of lakeshore. Donovan, you can maybe clarify that, but that's my understanding. So, as Patrick said, and myself, I don't know how they could come back on it. And maybe correct me if I'm wrong, Donovan, but that's my understanding.
No, that is correct. I mean, it's a different owner now. In 2012, Al Mays did amend the development agreement to relocate all slips to the Forest Hills Farm first edition. And the zoning code also doesn't allow a kind of non-riparian lot, collection of lots like Forest Hill Farm 2 to have a kind of legal right to have any riparian rights, really.
Donovan, in the plat map that you showed us, exhibit, I think it's D, which blocks and lots are part of the 23 that are not part of the rest of it?
Oh, you mean in the total Forest Hills Farms, 51?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so the so Forest Hills Farm 1 is essentially everything before the little footbridge, which I found amazingly cute. And that is shown, sorry. So basically the boundary, if you can see my cursor, the boundary, you can kind of see outlot C, that's the boundary between Forest Hills Farm 1 and 2. So you have, so where that 10 is, that is on Forest Hill Farms 2 property. And so those lots were actually never finally platted. This is now officially an outlot.
Other questions from commissioners on the applicant? One of the questions I have, and I'll step back to some of the comments. So when we look at Aqua and the expansion there, I see that specific proposal and ultimate approval by this commission very different from this one. And I have a really hard time comparing the two. The Aqua expansion is a business use that happens to be in a residential district, whereas this is a residential use in a residential district. Aqua is not entirely designed to be ongoing use by individual slip owners, but much of it was use of travel to the business. And so from a comparison standpoint of setting precedents, I'm not making a connection from Aqua as a precedent to help us decide or guide us tonight. But I do think that tonight could potentially leave precedent in several other locales on our lakes and in the city of Forest Lake, not just our primary lakes 1, 2, and 3. So that said, the piece that I'm still really struggling with in understanding from the applicant side, and I believe, Patrick, you may be best to try to help me understand this, is I'm still not seeing the practical difficulty from a legal perspective of how you believe that's met by our zoning code. And that's where I'm really struggling here. If you can expand on that or possibly say it in a different way than you've presented, maybe I missed it.
Sorry, I just had to unmute there. No, that's a good question. Practical difficulties is the combination of reasonable manner, essential character of the locality, unique circumstances. So practical difficulties is the whole umbrella. It's not just one thing. It's not what is the practical difficulties. That's not the question that the law asks. It asks those three separate questions that I just mentioned. And so if you want to think of it as the practical difficulty as a whole, I think that's just ever so slightly misplaced. You need to look at a lot of what I said. Is this a reasonable manner? Does it alter the essential character of the locality? And those things have to do with, in my opinion, the number of slips, how it's considered with the neighboring communities. That's why those things were mentioned within the cover letter. I know there's this dock issue which might have an effect on altering the essential character of the locality, and that's why the applicant is willing to work with the city and the neighbors in the community to make sure that doesn't happen. And I think the unique circumstances is all encompassing. When this development occurred, it's not grandfathered in like the rest of the localities. The fact that we've reduced from 51 to 23 lots, the fact that this is a lake abutting lot where it might not be an expectation. I know the development agreement says the expectation isn't that each one of these property owners is going to get a lot. An expectation is an expectation. It's not set in stone. It's not a promise. We're not saying you absolutely cannot have it. The expectation is that, for example, all of our children are going to go back to school in person, and the expectation is that they're going to continue to do so. We just don't know with the current climate. That's just an example of how I think whether the development agreement saying that there's an expectation that these additional property owners might not get lots. I don't think that's a hard set in stone or promise these aren't going to get lots. So there are unique circumstances that aren't caused by the property owner. It's caused by the timing. It's caused by the fact that the property owners didn't have a say. It was a developer. So I think that's all encompassing. When you're looking at practical difficulties, you're looking at everything as a whole, reasonable manner, character of the locale, and if the variance is granted, are we going to alter it, the unique circumstances. So practical difficulties isn't just one thing, if that makes sense.
It does. Thank you for further clarifying. I saw Commissioner Brink and Commissioner Young go up at the same time. I'll call on Commissioner Brink first.
You might have addressed this, but just related to the practical difficulties and the unique circumstances, is the HOA is primarily driving this? Is this something where the practical difficulty, or I should say the unique circumstances, lies with the HOA or actually lies with the homeowners? Because isn't it the homeowners association that's actually responsible and makes all the decisions for this dock issue? Whereas, where is the unique circumstance? Is it the owner or the HOA in this circumstance?
The unique circumstance can't be caused by the homeowner. So I think, you know, like Mr. Roberts would say, this unique circumstance wasn't caused by me. I didn't get to see the development agreement. I had, no, you know, it's a situation where he wasn't buying it from the developer. And so I think it has everything to do with, I guess, to say it bluntly, a whole. I mean, this is the timing, you know, the situation, the shoreline overlay law coming into effect, not being the same as all the other communities around the same area. So I think it's to answer your pointed question, the homeowners association is making the request. You know, these are owners that didn't create the unique circumstance. The homeowners association wasn't the one that caused the quote unquote problem. That was caused before the homeowners association or before the homeowners came into ownership of the property. And so I think it's slightly different than your typical variance, like setback, and I have a hill and I can't, you know, my garage I can only put my garage in this particular area because I have a cliff that falls off, or, you know, it's not your typical, you know, I think the applicant would admit, and I would admit, that this is not your typical variance application. So I think you're not here in this instance, you're not going to find something that you're not going to find something that's unique, similar to other variances that you've likely granted, that most cities grant, that related to some of the things Mr. Hart had talked about, garages, you know, things like that. So this isn't that type of variance. But I think unique circumstances hasn't been defined by the law as some sort of physical attribute to the property. I think generally speaking, you look at the league memorandum on variances, it says generally speaking, it might be related to the land or the physical characteristics of the land, but that's just generally speaking. So I think this is going to be a slightly different variance request. This is a slightly different variance request than most variance requests.
Commissioner Young.
Mr. Doran, I bought a piece of property that had been previously subdivided. And my piece of property is about 4 times the size of any of the other additional properties in this subdivision. But the covenants of the subdivision state that none of the properties can be subdivided. Fortunately, I did read the covenants of the subdivision before I purchased the property. Are you saying that the homeowners association has been able to set aside the covenants of this subdivision? Because the covenants of the subdivision appear to me as just a layperson that the boat slip rights were allocated to specific properties, and the covenants in Article 10 were pretty clear on what those rights were and which properties did and didn't have boat slip rights. So was the homeowners association able to set aside the covenants of the subdivision, and so all the covenants of the subdivision are set aside, or just some of them?
Good question, Commissioner Young. I'll just address the 2 Section 10 covenants that are contained in the staff agenda packet, 10.2 and 10.8. I won't read those for you because I assume you have it in front of you and have read it in preparation. But they don't say that you can never have more boat slips. They say right now, the number of slips is not proportional to the number of properties. And they say there's no assurances or expectation that you're going to get slips in the future. That doesn't mean you absolutely aren't going to get slips in the future. It just says there's no expectation, and that's fine. There's no expectation, there's no assurance. That's exactly why we're coming before this body tonight. but that doesn't say, I don't think you'd be violating the covenant by granting this variance, because that's just saying, you're just saying, well, my expectation is X, but actually Y is what's happening. And so I don't think you would be violating these covenants if the variance was granted. I think it just is letting those property owners know the number of properties don't equal the number of slips. This number of slips is smaller than the number of properties, and there's no expectation or assurance that that's ever going to change. Now, here we are a decade later, where a property owner who wasn't a part of the development agreement is saying, hey, I understand that there's no expectation or assurance that I'm going to get these extra boat slips, but I'm coming to you and making that request. And so I don't think the HOA would be violating the covenants if this was granted. I think it's just more of a statement, not this wouldn't be something that I personally would put in a covenant if I was drafting it. I guess I would just say that.
I understand that you wouldn't, but it says a boat slip right shall consist of an exclusive, non-revocable, conditional license to use a designated boat slip identified by the identification number. And I'm concerned about the effect of the covenants, and if someone who had purchased a lot with an expectation that they were purchasing something of higher value than the lot that they didn't purchase, because it had a boat slip attached to it as an exclusive super special right. My understanding was that covenants of subdivisions were not suggestions, but they were things that were put in place so that the restrictions on that particular subdivision would be memorialized, and that future owners and the attorneys representing them in the purchases would understand the need to abide by those covenants. Or you can help me subdivide my 20 acres.
I wholeheartedly agree with you. I mean, it's not really a rhetorical question, but who would have the issue with the extra lots, right? I mean, who besides the city, right? I mean, that's why we're asking for permission. What private landowner would have issue with the extra docks? And who, the HOA has given Mr. Robertson his cohorts permission to come and request this variance in front of the city. I mean, who I'm not talking about separate landowners who might have their own issues who have expressed it. I mean, I guess I'm asking, it's not necessarily rhetorical. I guess I'm just trying to start a conversation. Who would have the issue? I mean, who would?
Yeah, if I could just step in there.
Yeah.
So this, this conversation was part of the neighborhood HOA for a number of months, and ultimately ended up being unanimous to vote that to increase the slips. So no one else in the neighborhood has the issue with it. They see the general value of what that could do for all the properties, whether someone has a slip or not. So that's stated in minutes that we could provide, if that's a concern.
Commissioner Batty?
I've been listening here, and I just want to weigh in on a couple things. First of all, I don't see any precedent at all in comparison in comparing this request for a variance to a CUP application for Aqua. It's about as in my mind, that's about as apples and oranges as you can get it. Not because of yes, on the surface, the request for additional slips is the same, but the laws that underlie these requests are completely different. And I'm not I'm not persuaded by that is a precedent. Another, I have neither bragging or complaining, but I've had to sit on both sides of the fence on more variances than I would ever care to have been part of. I realize that there is difficulty here with the language. And I've had to come under the chafing of variance language that's primarily written to deal with physical land attributes. And I've talked long and hard with the city about this and other cities, and I don't know what the answer to that is, but we can talk about all these nuances of who wants what and why they want it and the timing and those kinds of issues, but I do not see those as practical difficulty. I think this is this is a request for convenience, and it's there. I just fail to see the difficulty issue here. The other, I realize that to call this variance, or to find a physical attribute other than maybe the length of the pier, which clearly could be overcome, that in my mind is not, that's not even an issue in this, in my mind, because I think we can deal with lines, you could deal with lines of sight, but I'm not convinced that we have dealt with this practical difficulty issue. I think we've tried to make inconvenience into a practical difficulty, and I'm not able to do that. The other term that has been thrown out here tonight is the term of bringing things into compliance, and I'm clearly missing something on that. Unless it's compliance of the rights and the abilities to have a slip for each one of the lots in this subdivision. And I don't, compliance isn't part of the variance issue in my mind. I don't see that. So I'm still struggling here with the practical difficulties aspect of this.
Did the applicant want to respond? We are at the applicant point. Blake Roberts, you're on mute. I think I hear you, or I see you talking.
Yeah, so as far as the compliance thing, Commissioner Batty, you clearly didn't look at the application talking about the different properties that are already existing. You're talking about west side condos next to the boat launch, 250 feet of lakeshore, 24 boat slips. You're talking about Pioneer Point, 50 feet of lakeshore, 12 to 11 boat slips. You can go on and on and on. So as far as that was the whole thing when Donovan and I started talking about that. That was the compliance thing. It's clearly every other similar property is out of compliance. It's clear, and I get that you can go the grandfather route. That's fine, but that's just the reality of it. Whether or not you want to see it that way, but that's the way it is. It's just they're all out of compliance, and that was Donovan's excitement about the whole thing when we first brought it, is bringing all those people into compliance.
No, you misunderstood what I was, my point here. I'm talking about, I'm still trying to, I mean, one of the things that's just been hammered into us as I know I'm not a new planning commission member anymore, but as a new planning commission member, we just get hammered into us that, you know, we apply laws and existing laws and ordinances to a particular situation. And I'm trying to do that. I'm not arguing that there are things that there are other, whatever you want to call them, areas, pieces of property, lengths of lakeshore that have a higher ratio of, I'm not arguing that at all, but I don't, a variance, granting a variance isn't the way that you solve that problem.
I was just responding to your question about the compliant, who's out of compliant or not. So
All right, I did see a question pop up from somebody that wishes to speak at the public hearing, and we will have that after the point commissioners are done asking the applicant questions. So commissioners, other questions of the applicant? All right, seeing none, we may bring you back up, Blake and Patrick, so hang on while we go through the public hearing, please. We will open the public hearing after Donovan reads the written correspondence to us that was sent via email to commissioners earlier today. You can either speak at City Hall or via the Zoom meeting. If you haven't already, let staff know in a message that you wish to speak at this specific public hearing for the dock variance consideration, and we will bring you up in queue. If you noted on the first application in the public hearing, typically staff and commissioners don't respond. We do have some dialect at some points in time, like we just have in the process leading up to this, but typically we do not engage in that during the public hearing. So we will open the public hearing at 8:30. I'm sorry, we're not going to open it yet. Donovan, can you please read the letters that were sent to us?
Certainly. These
Thank
letters
you.
were, yeah, you're welcome. These letters were sent to the city in response to the public hearing notices and received as of today. We received your letter about adding 5 slips for the development right next to us. I would like to attend the hearing on September 9th as my property is most impacted by any changes with the Forest Hills Farm development. Can you send me a copy of what is desired / proposed, which I did. My family's observations, concerns, and recommendation include the development was approved for 18 slips, knowing full well that 23 lots were part of the development. How can it be changed now that we were told years ago that was the maximum? As you recall, there was a lot of concerns about that many boats. The current dock setup is okay, but does present a lot of safety concerns about swimming, multiple boats going and coming, etc. At least 50% of the boaters have to cut across the open water in the 100 to 200 feet in front of my dock. If I extend my dock straight out, which I could, it would make this situation worse. If I move my dock around 25 feet to the north, it would make this current safety situation much worse. Number 2, if the proposal is to extend the Forest Hills Farm dock 20 or more feet, it would be close to encroaching on the visual property line of my north edge of my property as you extend it into the lake. If a best interest of all solution is needed, in quotes, I would propose that the Forest Hills Farm be moved commensurately north for every foot of extension. In fact, moving the dock 20 feet north at the shore, align the dock in the direction more parallel with Dana Hallberg's, could create a safe solution for all. I believe the end point of the dock in the lake could be about the same position as it is now, give or take several feet. If these things can't be accomplished with safety in mind, then no changes should be allowed. Please note, no one has the same perspective on the situation until you are on my property, dock, and in the water nearby. I encourage you to stop by and see for yourself. I've seen the proposal, and this is after I sent this letter writer, the proposal. I've seen the proposal and the spacing between the docks of Forest Hills Farm and ours on 9788 210th Street Court is not safe. Please consider my attached layout showing current, proposed, and my edits to the Forest Hills Farm proposal. Our edits keep about the same spacing between the docks and still allow Forest Hill Farm to get 23 lot dock slips. Here, I'll show you what was submitted by the by the applicant. So it's showing that those slips going out in a different way that would need to keep the separation of docks for safety. So that was part of that written comment. Sincerely, John and Pam Swanson. September 6, 2020, next letter. Variance application to increase the number of slips on the Forest Hills Farm Common Dock. Dear Planning Commission members, thank you for the opportunity to provide input to this decision. We have reviewed the evaluation information provided by the city staff, Donovan Hart, and the DNR, John Gleason. Both reports provide a comprehensive review of the relevant codes and regulations for making the recommendation to reject the request for variance to the current 18 slip limit. As local community residents, we appreciate their expertise and thoroughness. We would like to reiterate and emphasize some of the issues that we feel are most salient, especially related to the following articles of the CCRs of the Forest Hills Farm HOA. It should be very apparent to any prospective new owner that while access may be possible, a boat slip is unlikely to be included in their purchase. 10.2, the number of boat slips which governmental authorities will permit to be maintained is not sufficient to enable each owner to have a boat slip assigned to the owner. 10.4.3, again, another quote, an owner who holds a boat slip right may rent to another lot owner the right to the use of the boat slip, close quote. 10.4.4, quote, the association may, but need not, hold up 2 boat slips for the use of all owners who do not hold boat slip rights, close quote. Recent visual inspection of the dock suggests that 4 slips currently have no watercraft in them. Might these slips be available for use by all or new prospective owners? 10.6.2 II, quote, in the event a slip owner fails to pay an amount invoiced for slip costs and expenses, said defaulting slip owner's boat slip right shall be deemed suspended, and the association may retain or transfer said boat slip right to another owner, close quote. 10.8, caps in the document. Slip owners understand and acknowledge that there are no assurances regarding any future authorization of boat slips by the applicable governmental authorities. As nearby shoreland property owners, we believe the existing 210-foot dock has a significant negative impact, visual impact on our view of the shoreline to the north of our property. Potentially extend this dock an additional 90 feet, 300 feet from the shoreline would dramatically impact our view and create further congestion, noise, and safety concerns within this relatively confined area. To make this location the potential longest dock on the lake would, without question, further detract from the natural environment and character of our locality, as well as potentially detract from the appeal and value of our property. With all due respect, it seems rather pretentious for the applicant to suggest that it is likely that no resident will notice the additional 4.6 slips and that the additional 4.6 slips will not alter the essential character of the locality when he does not actually have a view of the dock from his residence or the activity generated by it. Additionally, he seems to be grasping at straws to suggest that the slip/dock expansion will help reduce the spread of invasive species and is in the best interest of the city. These are quotes. However, we appreciate his honesty in noting his goal to increase property value and buyer pool, but we question at whose expense. In conclusion, we concur with the recommendations of the city staff and DNR and support the recommendation to reject the request for variance to increase the number of boat slips for the Forest Hills Farm HOA. Thank you for your consideration. Sincerely, Stephen Joe Zimmerman in Forest Lake. September 3rd, 2020. Next letter. Whom it may concern. This letter is in regards to the variance request for increased boat slips and dock extension at Forest Hills Farms. As a lake homeowner with a dock in very close proximity to the Forest Hills Farm boat slip, I can attest to the danger due to high traffic already present with the current 18 slips. I've personally witnessed boats entering and exiting these slips at high speeds with numerous families swimming at the end of the dock. Jet skis roar in and out with loud ATVs to transport them down to their slips. We have witnessed 2 jet skis collide as a result of the traffic and distractions present. It's only a matter of time before someone is seriously injured, and this is at a time when the boat slip is not even at capacity. While safety is my top priority, the thought of a 380-foot dock protruding from our shoreline would be aesthetically horrendous and could result in a decrease in the value of our property. Forest Hills residents seem only concerned about increasing their property values while disregarding ours, of whom we pay some of the highest taxes in the city. Thank you for taking the time to hear our concerns. I hope this helps the council in making an informed and safe decision. We would also request the council's discretion in keeping our anonymity as to not cause issue with our nearby neighbors. Sincerely, name and address redacted. Next letter is email dated September 7th. Dear Mr. Hart and the Forest Lake Pine Commission, I'm in receipt of your letter requesting feedback in regards to the variance application of Forest Hills Farm HOA for additional dock slips. As you may know, Craig Campbell and myself are partners in Lakeview Farms of Forest Lake LLC, the neighboring lakeshore and acreage to the north of Forest Hills Farm HOA. And we're involved in a legal dispute against Forest Hills Farm HOA and the City of Forest Lake. Even though my wife and I have been treated poorly by a few of our neighbors in Forest Hills Farm HOA and not afforded the same meeting access with the City of Forest Lake that has been granted to Forest Hills Farm HOA, I am not opposed to the additional dock slips requested by the HOA. Since the HOA dock was installed over a decade ago, and as the lots have been developed with increasing activity down at the lake, I do not recall a time in which more than 50% of the occupied slips have been vacant, meaning that I do not see the lake getting overused because of this HOA, and do not believe the additional 5 slips would be a hardship to the lake, nearby residences, or myself. If Tim's Marina is allowed to have as many boat slips as they have, I don't see why Forest Hills Farm HOA can't have 5 additional slips. Thank you for the opportunity to express my opinion. Sincerely, Jim Harley. Next letter, dated September 7th, 2020, to the Planning Commission. Dear Planning Commission members, we oppose Forest Hills Farm Owners Association request for a zoning variance to increase the number of boat slips on their communal dock by 28%. Owners who purchased lots without boat slip rights did so with full knowledge. Equally important, owners who purchased lots with boat slip rights did so with full knowledge that not all lots within the subdivision had boat slip rights. Now the Forest Hills Farm HOA, whose members purchased their properties with full disclosure, requests that the Planning Commission change the nature of some of the properties in their subdivision. In substance, the HOA is requesting a zoning variance to increase property values. This is a quote from the narrative from the application. As it stands, Forest Hills Farm is at a disadvantage as many of the developments have a 1-to-1 property to slip ratios. Forest Hills Farm residents had no choice or no say in the availability of slips for each property owner at the time the development agreement was executed. Also, another quote, "It is unfortunate that our development agreement causes some of the property owners to have to trailer in their boats, and the lack of slips for a particular property reduces its market value as well as the buyer pool. If someone wanted to buy a property on or near the lake, a slip would be important to have for such a buyer." Both those quotes are from the applicant's narrative. Altering the nature of residential lots within the Shoreland Overlay District to increase market value in the buyer pool is not a valid reason for the Planning Commission to grant a zoning variance. Indeed, adding a deeded boat slip to lots without boat slip rights will increase the market value of these properties. But the increase in Forest Hills Farm market values will come with increased congestion, decreased safety, and decreased market values for lakefront properties surrounding the HOA dock. According to Mr. Roberts, it is likely that no resident will notice the additional 4.65 in parentheses slips on our property, considering the traffic that already exists on the lake. Mr. Roberts is wrong. Safety is already a concern because of the traffic congestion near the HOA dock. Increasing the HOA dock capacity by 28% will not only increase congestion and decrease boating, swimming, kayaking, and paddleboard safety for surrounding properties. We and the 4 lakefront homeowners to our north, like members of the HOA, purchased our properties after the HOA's dock agreement was executed. Everyone was responsible to understand the nature of the property they purchased. Increasing the HOA dock to a 380-foot dock that extends 300 feet into the lake will permanently alter the character of the surrounding properties. To do so is not equitable to the surrounding lakefront property owners or consistent with the Shoreland Overlay District rules. Sincerely, Janice Raffield and William Raffield. Next letter. Dear Planning Commission members and City Council members, we oppose Forest Hill Farm Owners Association request for a zoning variance to increase the number of boat slips on their communal dock by 28%. Owners who purchased lots without boat slip rights did so with full knowledge. Equally important, owners who purchased lots with boat slip rights did so with full knowledge that not all lots within the subdivision had boat slip rights. Increasing the HOA dock to a 380-foot dock that extends 300 feet into the lake will permanently alter the character of the surrounding properties. To do so is not equitable to the surrounding lakefront property owners or consistent with the Shoreland Overlay District rules. The evaluation in the staff report by city staff is correct, and under no circumstance should this variance be granted given the rules of the zoning ordinance. Sincerely, Robert Linwood and Rosalie Linwood. That's the written comments that were received by the city as of today.
Thank you, Donovan. I'm getting feedback here. We will move into the public hearing starting at 8:52 and begin with anyone that is physically at City Hall. Do we have anyone there that wishes to speak on this topic? Donovan, you're on mute.
There is no one here at City Hall to speak on the matter.
All right, thank you. Karen, do we have people queued up?
I do have one attendee with their hand raised, so I'm going to move Mr. John Swanson into the meeting.
Okay, and John Swanson, if you were in the first public hearing, I'm going to ask that you state your name and your address for the record, and then go ahead and make your statement for the public hearing. Anyone else wishing to speak, if you can raise your hand or send a comment to staff in the message box, we'll queue you up next. And John, if you're trying to speak, you are on mute. You may need to unmute yourself in the lower left corner. Karen, are you able to unmute John?
Well, I'm clicking on it. It doesn't seem to be unmuting when I try to click on his. Let's see if that works.
You're unmuted. We can hear you now, John. Thank you. If you could state your name and address for the record, and then go ahead and state your comments.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. This is John Swanson. I'm at 9788 210th Street, Court North in Forest Lake. I'm the property just to the southeast of the Forest Lake Farm development. I'm the one that's most impacted by the development and activity and the rules and everything you guys are talking about. It's been pretty well covered here tonight. The only thing I want to reinforce, and I did it in my first letter before I saw the plan, was if you have any concerns or questions about access, safety and so forth, come out and walk on my dock and get a view of the current dock And then also bring with you in the packet that I showed the overlay of the proposed dock and also a common solution that or alternative solution for a new dock with 23 slips. The gist of it is it's marginally safe right now, people backing in and out of the dock of the homeowners association versus being accessed or in the water, swimming and boats in front of my dock. You move it over 45 feet, I guarantee you can't take a 25-foot pontoon out of the first slip that's on the proposed dock and back it out without coming either hitting my dock or coming within 5 feet of it. It's not safe. I'll put kids in the water, put in water skiers or tubers and so forth. As it is right now, it's marginally safe. You move it over 45 or 40 to 45 feet as the proposal is, you're asking for trouble. That's all I'm trying to say is keep safety in mind. Now, as a good homeowner and a good neighbor, I'm proposing an alternative solution in terms of dock options and so forth, but you can't approve what's being proposed. It's not safe. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I was on mute. Karen, did we have anyone additional to speak?
I don't have any additional people raising their hand as attendees. I have, looks like 2 other attendees, but no hands raised.
All right, we'll give the public about 30 seconds to raise their hand or indicate some way they wish to speak, and we'll bring them up. All right, is there anyone else that's raised their hand or indicated?
No, there's not.
We will proceed with closing the public hearing at 8:57 and bring it back to the commission for discussion and or consideration of a motion. Commissioners? Commissioner Miller?
I think the one issue I have is not so much the additional boat slips. It is kind of the layout, and I know Mr. Dorn has made it clear that that wasn't part of the applicant's proposal, but I don't think I'm prepared to make a decision on this unless we could see something more concrete in terms of how they want to lay out their dock and they want to access 24 boat slips. I don't like the idea of it going out 300 and some feet. I don't know what the best solution is, but based on just what we've seen in the packet, if that is one of the options, I don't like that at all, and I wouldn't be in favor of it. If there was another proposal utilizing more of the square footage of that property and spreading out the usage of the docks, I might consider it. But based on what I'm seeing, I would not be in favor of it at this point.
Commissioner Miller, or Donovan, did you want to respond?
Yeah, I'd like to respond to that one. The applicant, Mr. Roberts, was given multiple opportunities to present a dock. He did not, and so in this case, I did use one that had been submitted. And given the shallowness of the water, I'm not sure what other options you can do besides extending it further out the way it was done. And it kind of really boggles my mind that now they're arguing that this is not going to be it's not really a valid proposal when for over 2 years now, Mr. Roberts and I have shared emails on this. And when I asked him for his dock proposal, he does not have one. And then when I sent him this proposal from dated April 2019, he didn't tell me not to put it in this packet. And so I put it in the packet. Even after I sent him this staff memo on, I believe it was Thursday afternoon or Friday morning, again, no comment, like, listen, that's the wrong one. Let me send you one that we want to propose. And it seems to me rather intentional that the applicant and his representative have been simply focusing on this 5 slips. 5 slips is pretty ambiguous concept, but the length of the dock is, and that represents the land use that the variance is related to. And Mr. Roberts is correct that back in January of 2018, when we initiated this conversation, at least by my email record, I did think a zoning text amendment might work, but I was clear that a variance was not a pathway that I would support. And my view is consistent. I do not see a unique property, unique circumstance with the property. And it's clear that this Planning Commission has raised multiple opportunities for them to state that. And that has not been stated by the applicant or his representative. Also, I did check the Aqua public record and that staff memo, and the dock configuration actually is parallel to that Aqua Restaurant Peninsula. So it does not extend out in the same way into the lake like a proposed Forest Hills Farm dock. And also, and besides obviously being a CUP and having different evaluation criteria in its review for, as a land use application, there was no public comment opposing that dock expansion, either in the minutes or written comments submitted. And also, in an issue that Commissioner Young brought up, I've been advised by our city attorneys multiple times, and this has come up in different occasions with shoreland development or development of accessory structures, that the city does not want to be in conflict with private agreements that the landowners have signed off on within properties, within HOAs, within different CCRs. And so that to me is a concern if this was approved without the CCRs being, that document being amended. So I just wanted to provide some background there, and that the applicant was given multiple opportunities to submit a dock plan and did not.
All right. Thank you, Donovan. Commissioner Miller, I agree with you on your comments in regard to the dock, and actually did visit John Swanson and his wife's home and visualize the dock there. And he does have really legitimate safety concerns with the configuration that was presented to us. But I also understand in visiting with Blake Roberts and another member of the HOA and being on their dock, that they are open to a different configuration. So, but I like you, I think, or at least in what I think you stated, am in the position of supporting being able to see that visual before a point of approval. But for me, before we get to that point, the other question is this meeting a practical difficulty? And I'm honestly still really struggling with that piece. And I understand our staff position. I think it's well stated. I think we have every reason as a commission to say no here, if we so wished. But I think we may have an opportunity to say yes as well. But unless we're meeting that practical difficulty piece, I don't know how we can say yes. And so for me, I'm not ready to move forward with this project tonight either. And whether that means that we have our own attorney look at whether practical difficulty is met based on what they have presented tonight, that is in addition to what we visualized in the packet, and giving them an opportunity to come back with a more detailed and concrete dock structure. I'm kind of in that same mindset, but I think I'd be asking for a little bit more than where you're going. Other commissioners, Commissioner Young?
I don't see a way that I can support the variance request, not only for the 5 findings of fact that were presented by staff, but for a 6th finding of fact. It was very clearly presented to the Planning Commission by neighbors that the increased dock would significantly and adversely affect their use and enjoyment and safety of their property. And that is something that we should not allow a variance that will adversely affect the use and enjoyment of adjoining properties. I don't see, from my perspective, value in going over this again. So I am going to make a motion, rise or fall as it may, that we deny the variance request to increase the number of permitted dock slips on the Forest Hills Farm First Edition based on the following findings of fact. The applicant did not identify a specific condition or circumstance unique to the parcel that would not have been known in advance, that would result in a practical difficulty, that reasonable uses of the lots for houses are already permitted by the zoning code. The application fails to demonstrate that the variance would be consistent with the spirit and intent of this chapter and with the comprehensive plan. And that also, that finding, the spirit and intent is to not adversely affect the surrounding properties. That the Forest Hills Farm First Edition Declaration of Covenants, Conditions, and Restrictions explicitly states that the number of slips is limited and property owners should not expect the number of slips to change. And that the proposed boat slip would result in a dock that would adversely affect the adjoining properties and their use, enjoyment, and safety of their properties, altering the essential character of the adjoining properties.
And that is your motion. Is there a second to the motion? Commissioner Betty, are you seconding the motion? Commissioner Betty, you're in mute.
Okay, I'm seconding the motion.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Young, for clarity, and I was trying to zip through on my other computer here through the packet. For clarity to help Karen and me, I think, I'm smiling. Are you giving the findings of fact that are in our packet on pages 13 and 14, and then adding that 6th
I am
one?
slightly modifying the findings of fact on page 15. Recommendation 1 through 5, and I made some slight adjustments to those findings of fact.
And I believe
Thank you.
that the changes were mostly in 4 and 5, adding the language that the I'm sorry, 3 and
5.
3 and 5, adding language that the spirit and intent of the zoning code is not adversely impact neighboring properties in 3, and then adding 5 that the proposed dock slip would result in a dock that would adversely impact, but that similar language involving, neighboring properties, safety and enjoyment of their docks.
Use and
that-
enjoyment.
Yeah.
Altering the essential character of the locality by adversely affecting the use and enjoyment and safety as stated by those individuals of the essential character of their locality.
Thank you for the clarification on your motion, Commissioner Young. Is there discussion on the motion? My comment, and I understand your position, Commissioner Young, that you don't want to waste time on this. And for me, I'm truly undecided on this, and every single person that I spoke to and visited with, I informed them of that as well. And for me, to get to a yes or a no, I need to know whether we can do this before I really want to consider if we should. I think we have every justifiable reason if we wanted to just straight out deny this. I don't necessarily think that that is the pathway I would wish to take. If we can find a mitigable way to appease neighbors that are concerned about the dock if there was a reconfiguration, and there was a way where it actually met the practical difficulty, so we didn't set a bad precedent for other properties. And I realize that could happen even if we approved it, but so for me, I would really prefer to see an attorney's opinion and a reconfiguration of the dock or a configuration of the dock from the applicant. So I'm not going to support this specific motion tonight, but other commissioners, Commissioner Keen?
Well, Eric, Commissioner Lang, I have to agree with you 100%. I'm right now, I'm 50-50. It's, the difficulty thing is, they got one argument this way, one argument that way. Finding out that the diagram of the dock isn't what they actually submitted. That's the one from 2018. And my conversations with when I stopped by the dock last week and met with some of the homeowners, they're willing to pretty much any design, the city, whatever we request, to change it, to move it, to please everyone. I'd like to see all that, but like I said, right now I'm on the fence. It's 50-50. So
I saw Commissioner Young's hand go up next, and then I'll call on you, Commissioner Brink. I saw you right after her earlier. Commissioner Young?
This motion does not have to be voted on if there is a second non-debatable motion that's made afterwards.
Understood. I believe you're referencing a table motion. Commissioner, I personally would prefer that we allow all commissioners to speak and give an opinion tonight before we go down that pathway, although I certainly would entertain that as well. Commissioner Brink?
I was, just gonna kind of say the language with the, I guess it was the undue hardship or the practical difficulties. The state code in number 3, what says the variance will not alter the locality's essential character. And I think Commissioner Young and some of us also talked about this. Visiting with the homeowners, I guess I got a different opinion from most of them, that they were against this because it would alter the essential character, especially standing on John Swanson's dock. At the end of his dock, it's plain to see that there really isn't anywhere else for this dock to go as it stands. If you were to move that north, it's so shallow you couldn't even put a boat in there. The only way is to actually come back towards John's dock, and you're already going to be in his line of sight if you try to get a boat out. I heard from multiple people on the shore there, that safety was a big concern, that there was just a lot of traffic, and they're concerned about their family, of course. Something that Patrick had said that I found a little bit incredible was for an argument that adding 5 slips wouldn't be noticeable given the amount of slips or docks on the lake. I think it's the concentration of these slips in this one little area. We're not talking about how many docks or slips are on the lake total. We're talking about this particular situation. I really have to look at the what's going on with the neighbors here, and I completely agree that I can totally see what their concern would be. And so I think in that third part, the practical difficulty is I completely agree that there's going to be an alteration there. So I would be open to, if there is an alternate dock, solution, but just looking at the whole thing at the end of John's dock and then looking at a GPS satellite view, I don't know how else it's going to be. And 300 feet or whatever it is out, that's just, to me, not practical. So.
Other discussion, commissioners? Commissioner Keen.
Is this organization, are they limited to just one dock? Or because they own almost 300 feet of lakeshore, could they put out a second dock? On the north side?
There is nothing zoning code that doesn't prevent them from putting additional dock. Of course, the development agreement limits, the zoning code does limit to 18. I would have to look back at the development agreement to see if it has a mention of multiple docks. So I'll have to get back to you on that one.
Thank you.
Further discussion, commissioners? Seeing none, we have a motion on the table for denial with a listing of findings of fact. Karen, can you please take a roll call vote?
Commissioner Young,
Aye.
Commissioner Miller,
Aye.
Commissioner Keen,
No.
Commissioner Batty,
Aye.
Commissioner Brink,
Aye.
Chair Langness.
No. Motion carries. Donovan, we did pass a denial here with findings of fact. Normally we do the findings of fact, I think, as a separate motion, but is there anything else additional here that we need to do?
No, I don't believe so. The code requires that, finding facts be there and they be related to the legal criteria related to a variance, the evaluation criteria. Sometimes, we will check the minutes to make sure that that it's accurately quoted. The motion was accurately quoted, but no, I don't believe there's anything else. And I just want to note too that the city attorney did, as another note, just the city attorney did review this staff memo and didn't have any comments other than some, actually it was another finding of fact of denial that related to the essential character of the locality. And so just as that note, so that the city attorney, it was a staff memo that, there was more than just one author.
Thank you, Donovan. We will move on to item number 8.
Just one, Eric, can I just make one comment? Commissioner?
If you're really brief, Blake, we
wanna-
have voted on it already.
Yep, no, and there's nothing to that. I want to appreciate your time and Commissioner Keen. I reached out to all the planning commission members, did that get very much response at all. As most of you know, I'm on the EDA, and as you people are public officials, and I have to say, state publicly, disappointed in the lack of response to have some feedback, especially when I find out one commissioner actually visited the other properties and yet would not reach out to me until this afternoon via text after I reached out a number of times. So as a similar position that I'm in on the EDA, you be on the Planning Commission, if you folks don't have enough time to reach out to your constituents, I think it's time to consider whether you have time to be on a Planning Commission or not. So just want to state that for the fact it's decided whatever decision was made. I respect that, but the fact that there was lack of communication or anyone reaching back out to me or anyone is disappointing. And as someone who I support, the city, being on the EDA, do much stuff for the community, it's truly disappointing. But I do thank Eric, you and Mike for taking the time to visit the property and have numerous conversations about it.
Mr. Roberts, within 1 hour of viewing your email, I did respond by email. I had not seen your email until I sent you my response.
We're gonna move on so that we're not jumping out of order here. Thank you for joining us tonight, Mr. Roberts. We're on item number 8, Tanner's Brook minor subdivision. And this item does have a public hearing as well. We will go in a similar format to prior. So it'll be really quick. Staff report, commissioner questions, applicant presentation, or any additions they have. Go back to commissioner questions and we'll open up the public hearing after. And I don't believe there's any letters here to read. So we'll open up the public hearing and then bring it back to consideration by the commissioners. Donovan, can you please kick us off?
I'd like to present the minor subdivision application from Craig and Andrea Brischke. Andrea here is on the call with us from the Tanner's Brook Golf Course. And this is actually a redo. The Brischkes brought forth a minor subdivision application in 2017 that was approved by the Planning Commission and City Council. And however, they didn't have the deed signed to actually create this 10-acre parcel that is located on that northwest corner of Tanner's Brook Golf Course. Here's the current map of it. Just with Fenway Avenue on the west side, and just south of the Headwaters 123 parcel. This parcel did have a concept plan review that the Planning Commission reviewed in spring of 2019, and actually denied based on evaluation criteria that were not met. So Planning Commission is somewhat familiar with this property. What is proposed is a 10-acre parcel that is conforming, given that is the minor lot, a minor lot size for a property without public water and sewer. Public water and sewer could be provided through the Met Council interceptor about 700 feet east of the property. And I'm not sure if, given our just access here, I'll show you a little clearer in red what the proposed boundaries are, this northwest corner. And basically the public water is up on Headwaters Parkway, approximately, I think it's about 1,400 feet to the north. So it's not adjacent for development purposes. But the City Planning Commission did approve this 10-acre parcel back then with the conditions that there be a minor subdivision agreement executed between the city and the owner. There would be a utility easement dedicated along Fenway, right-of-way easement dedicated along Fenway. Those 3 agreements were executed between the city and the developer, and that land dedication, the utility dedication did occur. I'm sorry, right-of-way dedication. And just this spring, Andrea did approach the city saying they wanted to clarify this and actually get this minor subdivision official. And so the lot is conforming, and the staff recommendation is for approval, just that the what is written here would be that the applicant pay the required parkland dedication fee, but right after I wrote that, I did confirm that the city did receive that in 2017. So that is not a condition as current. And so basically the staff recommendation is for a planning commission recommendation of city council approval of this subdivision, so that city can be allowed to sign the deeds and allow them to do this minor subdivision for the 10-acre parcel and the 70-acre parcel, which would remain part of that Tanner's Brook Golf Course. I'm happy to take any questions from the planning commission now.
Questions from commissioners? Commissioner Keen?
Donovan, is this the same parcel that we saw a couple years ago where the sewer lines and the water lines were all like 3-4 feet underground, and he didn't have permission to the Met Council for connections and stuff?
Roughly, yes. Yeah, there wasn't adequate utility accessibility shown in that concept plan, which was one of the reasons that both the Planning Commission and council recommended, decided of denial. But that's, that is not related to land. Land is here and it's currently vacant, and this before this city council is this minor.
Right. I was just wondering if it's the same parcel, and is it the same developer coming back with something new?
No, that developer has said he is withdrawing all plans in a formal letter to the city and council. And I've spoken to one developer this week regarding it, so I don't think he's still in the picture.
Commissioner Young?
They understand that they cannot tap directly into that municipal line, that Met Council line, correct?
That was not the city engineer's determination. There is a they could apply for that, and that's really the Met Council's decision to accept that permit or not.
But the city has not represented that they could tap directly into that line, correct?
Right. It's not in our authority, correct?
Okay, thank you.
Other questions on the staff report from commissioners? Seeing none. Is the applicant Andrea? Did I hear that correctly earlier? That's presenting tonight?
Yes.
Okay. Andrea, we'll give you some time to present anything additional you might have. If you have someone else on the call that you want to join with us, we can bring them on as well. And then we'll open it up for commissioners to ask questions of you after too.
Yeah, I really don't have anything else to add. Donovan basically said everything.
All right. Thank you, Andrea. Commissioners, are there any questions of the applicant? Seeing none. Donovan, I am correct that we had no written public comment on this?
That's correct.
Thank you. Do we have, we'll open up the public hearing then and move right into that. Do we have anyone at City Hall awaiting to comment on this item?
There is no one here at City Hall at present to comment on this item.
All right. Thank you. Karen, do we have anyone in the queue? And if there is a person that wishes to speak on this item, please raise your hand or flag city staff in the comment section so we can bring you in appropriately. Karen?
Yep, there's just one person as an attendee, no hands raised.
The attendee that I'm seeing is Saunders Property. Is that who you're referencing?
No.
Who are you referencing?
Mine says Mick Roberts on it.
Did either of those persons wish to speak?
No.
Thank you. Was there another Mick Roberts? I don't see that name on my screen, Karen.
Well, not on the screen, it's actually in the attendees. So if you look at panelists and attendees, but no hands are raised.
Okay, well, we'll leave it open for 30 seconds for someone to raise their hand, and then we'll move on to closing the public hearing if there's no desire to comment. All right, Karen, do we have anyone?
I do not.
Still not. Thank you.
Yep.
We'll close the public hearing at 9:30 p.m. and bring it back to commissioners for discussion and or consideration. Commissioners? Commissioner Miller.
I'll just recommend basically staff recommendations to approve the minor subdivision with the one condition. Sorry, I have to read it. One condition, still pay the required parkland dedication fee prior to the city signing property deeds for the new parcel.
There's a motion. Is there, Donovan, I'll call on you after the point of a second or a failure of it, but we're in a protocol. Commissioners, is there a second on the motion? Commissioner Batty, are you seconding? I believe that was a yes. You muted yourself and then
Second.
spoke.
Sorry.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Donovan, did you have a comment on the motion?
Yes, that condition that Commissioner Miller mentioned is not applicable now because it said it kind of conditionally, but the applicant did already pay the required parkland dedication fee in 2017 as part of that original, set of approvals. So I would ask that maybe make a friendly amendment to that motion or to just for a clean, recommendation of city council approval of the subdivision.
Commissioner Miller?
Yep, I made a mistake. I apologize. I would just like to make a change to that motion then. I could withdraw it if necessary. Otherwise, if we could just amend it to
You could certainly withdraw and make a new motion. That's probably the easiest if you want to
Okay.
just do it yourself.
Okay, I'll withdraw the original motion.
Sounds good. Did you have further discussion? Commissioner Miller?
I'd like to recommend a new motion that we approve based on staff recommendations, the minor subdivision as written.
There's a motion. Is there a second? Commissioner Keen, are you seconding? Commissioner Keen, Commissioner Keen seconds. Is there discussion on the motion? The only comment I have is it seems pretty cut and dry on this one. Nothing too exciting, so I'll definitely support it. Any other discussion? Seeing none, Karen, can you please take a roll call vote?
Commissioner Young,
Aye.
Commissioner Batty,
Aye.
Commissioner Miller,
Aye.
Commissioner Keen,
Aye.
Commissioner Brink,
Aye.
Chair Langness.
Aye, motion carries. Andrea, good luck with your project and whatever your future plans are with that property.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And we are moving on to item number 9, Broadway Avenue Retail Sketch Plan Review. So this is not up for a motion. I believe Donovan's presenting and the applicants may have some additional presentation and they're looking for feedback from us. Is that correct, Donovan?
Correct. Yeah,
You want to kick us off?
Certainly. Thank you. Chair, members of the Planning Commission, like to present the sketch plan review of a property on Broadway Avenue located in the old Bin Louis Chinese restaurant location, as well as kind of a unremarkable tin shed located at 1148 and 1098 Broadway Avenue West. So what is proposed in the sketch plan, which I'll show you the details in a second, is to have 2 access points on the Broadway Avenue, which is a county road, which applies here, and also have an access road, a 24 foot wide access road across the Westlake shopping center open space into that Westlake shopping center. And of course, for this sketch plan, there is the owner's consent to have this review. And the application sketch plan for your deliberation, and this is simply for non-binding feedback to the applicant. And this relates to kind of what does the Planning Commission see at this point? Things to offer, points to offer. Staff. There's been some staff review, but there's no formal decision made. And this is an opportunity for both Planning Commission and then filing for City Council to weigh in prior to the applicant, if they so choose, doing the full design for a site plan review to be reviewed by the Plan Commission. So some of the comments, and what you can see here is basically a footprint of about 8,800 square feet, oriented mostly to the northern part of the property. Of course, Broadway Avenue being in the north here. A stormwater management pond being located here on this north end. Between that and a drive aisle, looks like it's for a drive-through window. With it's listed as 65 total spaces with parking islands, and as I mentioned, kind of a drive-through lane for both for access and ingress to the south. And this, I believe, is actually a leasing requirement for some of the national franchises to have more than one access point. I guess onto 2 different directions. So what is proposed is basically retaining that one access point toward the west of the property, and then shifting the other driveway to be right out here. And essentially, they're both right in, right out because of the Broadway Avenue median. Some of the staff comments are that this doesn't maintain the 5-foot setback required for a commercial driveway. Also, this does not maintain the 5-foot setback from the rear property line as well. And that this dumpster location is somewhat inconvenient because of the amount of cars that will come through here. One thing I do like about this, Chipotle is located just next door here to the west, and that would make access a lot easier if cars could come along Broadway, come through here, rather than trying to take that left turn on 12th Street Southwest. And that's a real advantage. And I'm glad to see that this property owner, as well as the Westlake shopping property owner, are willing to provide this additional access. The drive-through standards do require enough stacking space for vehicles that are waiting to be served. And, assuming this is looks like this appears to be the drive-through, the reader board and window. This is approximately measured about 100 feet from here to here, which is essentially room for 5 vehicles, which is really not enough, as we've seen some other locations. So I think that they need some work there to work with adequate stacking space for that. There's a 40-foot building setback for the building, and this northeast corner doesn't comply with that. So it needs to be shifted. Something that can't be determined now is whether the this site meets the 80% maximum impervious surface, allowed by, the zoning district standards for lots in this, a highway business zoning district. And also another consideration is the lot depth here is shown 18 feet, where the city standard is 20 for lots that have this 90-degree orientation to the drive aisles. The good news is, and this was one of my original concerns talking to Mr. Saunders, who's one of the owners, and Mr. Roberts here also, Mr. Mick Roberts, is that it appears that there is enough room. I think we measured out, estimated, was it 40, something 4,500 or so square feet of available impervious on the Westlake Shopping Center site. And I believe this access is 4,200 square feet. So it does not, cause excessive amount of impervious surface on this lot next door. So it wouldn't put that parcel into nonconformity with that maximum impervious surface rule. Again, it's like 80% for that lot as well. The city engineer was given a chance to review this, but there's not much engineering in this. It's simply a concept. So things he relates to, he didn't have much to say, but he does have some concern about the easement area being on the southwest corner of the building being too close to the water and sewer line, which really bisect this property. And that's the location, that's the reason why the building was set far to the north. As you can see, these dashed lines, I don't know if you can see that well on your screens, maybe. This does represent where the city water and sewer lines come through. So this is rather close to that easement area, actually encroaching on the easement area. So we would make sure that doesn't encroach, in the next review of the plan. City engineer asks if the surrounding parking lot includes a curb on the south side of the building, and he has concerns about the drainage. And I did send this over to the Washington County for their review and have not received any comments back, but most likely both an access and right-of-way permits would be required from the county for this work along and within a county road. And Comfort Lake Forest Lake Watershed District is the stormwater permitting agency for this, and they would have comments on any kind of future plans. Of course, any future plan shall include the landscaping lighting plans as part of a fuller site plan review. But again, this is simply a sketch plan, and the applicant Steve Saunders did show me another plan right before meeting time. I'd like to bring up to share with you and have him speak to that with the chair's permission after we open up for any questions the Plan Commission has for me at this moment.
Thank you for closing that so I can see them. Commissioners, questions of the staff report? Commissioner Young?
Donovan, how much room is there between the right out of this parcel and the entrance for Super America? Because that particular entrance gets kind of hairy on occasion. How much room is there between so that you don't have crossing of one riding in and
There are dimensions here. I mean, that's something that'll be more clarified. There is required the 5-foot setback by the zoning district standards. Perhaps that's something that Mr. Saunders or Mr. Roberts can speak to.
This is just a challenging area at 12th and Broadway from a safety and traffic standpoint. And I'm just a little bit concerned with how many, and I realize it's the county's gig with how many entrances they allow or don't allow, but I am a little bit concerned with the safety, especially if we have some folks that are coming from that Westlake area trying to avoid going on to 12th and making the turn and zooming down this 24-foot roadway that they're proposing to get to Broadway.
Commissioner Miller, I saw your hand go up as well.
Donovan, my question is the drive-through window. I know it's a sketch, but I know in our city, we have worked really hard at preventing drive-throughs facing main roads. And obviously that would be something I think would have to change. I don't see us approving that based on what we've done with everybody else in town.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions on the staff piece? Otherwise, we'll open it up for the applicant. Is it Mr. Saunders? Are you going to present for us?
Yes, thank you.
If you wish to show us something as well, if you don't have screen share access, I'm sure staff can provide that for you.
Sorry. I believe Donovan, you have a copy of that from today?
Certainly. So this was the sketch plan dated 9/9/20.
Yep.
And so you had well, I'm sorry, you take it away.
Yeah, over on the right-hand side on the southeast corner, you'll see the dumpster moved over there. So it takes it out of the traffic area there. And I don't know, does everybody see that?
We can see we can see the screen in the dumpster, yes.
Okay, yeah, that was presented to Donovan just today here about 4:30, 4:45. We know that this is not the finished product here. We're just trying to step our way through this, the do's and the don'ts. A couple of things that I'd like to talk about, if I could, on the setbacks. Architectural Consortium, Kathy Anderson was the one that drew all this up. And she stated very avidly that all the setbacks are in line, whether it's the 5 feet, the 40 feet. She said, you're right on the button. And she knew the setbacks of the Forest Lake area before she actually drew the plan. The drive-through standard, my question is, do you actually have a stacking minimum or maximum amount in the city of Forest Lake?
No, there are basic standards for drive-through lanes, drive-through facilities with a permitted use, and they don't specify a number. So it's really left up to, decision makers to finally come to that decision. Mm-hmm. And within the highway business district, there aren't any rules that drive-through lanes or windows be prohibited from the front of buildings. However, that is a standard within the MU2 district, the zoning district, say along the Highway 61 corridor.
One of the commissioners, I'm sorry, I don't know which one it was, but had mentioned he'd have a hard time passing this because it's facing Broadway. Am I correct on that?
I believe that was Commissioner Miller. Did
Okay.
you want to clarify, Commissioner Miller?
That is correct. Based on what we've approved for most every other business in our city, we've tried to discourage the drive-through windows from facing the main thoroughfares.
Okay, my question then is, over at Starbucks, why did you pass that one? That's facing Broadway? Same situation
I
here,
don't
no
remember
different.
seeing that one.
It's on the west side.
Yeah,
it's
on
not-
the west side.
It's not facing Broadway. It's, I believe it's on the west side of the building.
It's on the west side of the building facing Broadway. You
Bro-
get your order in the
Broadway
back, you
runs
pull
east-west.
around and you're directly to the south. But, okay, but anyway, going back to this here, the drive-through standards, the one on the east is a 7-car stack up. The one on the west has an 8-car stack up, which is very, very adequate. I've been in the food business over 50 years, and this is very, very adequate. That's why I was asking you, Donovan, if the city actually has a number for stacking. The next question that I have, you're talking about the 65 cars with the dumpster area now to the southeast corner. It brings us down to, I believe on there, Donovan, it was 62 cars.
That's correct.
Yeah, okay. Okay, let's see. The parking you've got on the bottom here, the parking stall lengths are 18 feet are not compliant with the 20 feet. How long have you had this in the rules in Forest Lake? Quite a while?
I'd have to get back on that. It is at least for 10 years, we'll say.
Okay.
I can say that
Okay.
for certain.
What is actually the reasoning for that? Because of trucks and so on. The only other one that I know that has it is Woodbury. And that's because of trucks.
Yeah, I wouldn't know the exact circumstances, and I view things like that as more of the engineering design standard. We could discuss it with the scene engineer.
If you take a tape measure and you go across the street at that center that is not even opened yet, he's at 18 feet. Why can't we go 18 feet?
I'll have to check on that.
Okay.
Commissioner Young, I saw your hand go up. Did you have an answer to his question or?
The parking has been there for quite some time, and Forest Lake is not known for having small vehicles in our community. The prevalence of pickup trucks is very significant. I was more concerned about the stacking. I don't know if the rest of the commissioners observed it this summer, but as an example, Culver's across Broadway from here has considerably more than 7 cars of stacking. And many times this summer, the line to go into Culver's backed up well onto Broadway. And so I'm very concerned about the stacking on this, especially with the proximity to 12th. So I'll look forward to both a more detailed plan and to the comments of both the county and city engineers.
Well, and again, Commissioner Young, what you have to consider right now, this pandemic that we're going through, I would say that, 100% of the business right now is going through their drive-through. And I know for a fact they're doing about 75% of what they did in their original sales in the drive-through. With that said, when this pandemic, the vaccine, whatever comes up here, people feel more comfortable, they get the lobby opened up again, that's going to go all away. It's totally going to go away. We're in a temporary mode here in the food business right now. But thank God the people, and especially in Forest Lake, that have had drive-throughs have survived because of it. The sit-down restaurants, it had to just kill them. Let's see, the lot coverage, B2, 80%, okay. The trash, we talked about that. Donovan, you talked about the engineering. Mick, are you there? He's probably on mute. I think it was about 3 years ago that Mick and I came to a planning commission meeting. I don't even think any of you people were on it at the time. But we kind of put it on record. We didn't put the sewer and the water there. And I'm going to go back on that again. The city put it in there, went through the Moorhead property, and I just don't feel that we should have to move this. It's been checked out. It's fine. If there's issues, there's problems or whatever, we're going to have to fix it. But I just wanted to comment on that because of the engineer, what he's talking about here. Storm water review has not been done. The Washington County review, as Donovan said, I have heard nothing back, and it sounds like Donovan, you haven't either.
That's correct.
Yeah. So the few issues I've got, number one is the parking. Number two is the drive-through, and all the setbacks here they're adequate. All of them are. And this is right from an engineer that's drawn restaurant plans for 45 years. So I guess really that's all I have to say.
Well, we'll open it up for commissioners for questions and comments. I will say, Mr. Saunders, I have been on the commission for approximately twice the time frame you stated of 3 years, and I honestly don't recall you coming to a planning commission meeting and mentioning anything about that sewer. And I know Commissioner Miller and Commissioner Batty and Commissioner Keene all extend my tenure, and Commissioner Young was on our city council for quite some time, and perhaps it was another board, but I don't know of any point in time you would have come to us for that.
It was council.
It was the council?
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, we were there. I remember Donovan, of course you were there. Yep.
Okay. So we'll open it up to commissioners for questions. I believe Commissioner Young had her hand up first.
Yes.
I don't mean to correct you, sir, but the Culvers is a summer after summer after summer after summer. And unfortunately, I cannot guarantee you that there will not be another situation similar to our existing pandemic in the future. And one of our concerns is trying to use our crystal balls to make sure that the projects work not only now and next year, but for several years in the future.
All right. Donovan, do you have it on screen share or something here?
Oh, hey, Mick, you got to take it off screen share.
Okay, thank you. I can see everybody now. I'm trying to see whose hand are raised. Questions or comments from other commissioners? Commissioner Miller.
I would just make a comment echoing Eric. You know, we've been on, a number of us have been on planning commission a long time, but Mr. Saunders, there might be a misunderstanding. I guess what I'm saying is your Broadway runs east and west, and east and west side drive-throughs, I wouldn't have an issue with. North side drive-through facing Broadway is what I have an issue with. And when we went through that plan, it sounded like your drive-through was going to be on the north side of the building facing Broadway. If your drive-through is going to be on the east or the west side, I don't have an issue with that.
But again, I go back to asking you, why did you pass it then at Starbucks?
Mr. Saunders, I
Star-
would have to review Starbucks, but I don't believe it's facing
Facing
Broadway.
Starbucks, I'm positive Starbucks has their front door facing Broadway, but its drive-through is on the
West
side of
side.
the building.
Yes, facing Broadway.
No.
No.
All parking for the.
You gotta take a look.
I'm positive. I have literally shared that document on social media probably 50 times to people asking what is going in that building, which will lead me into one of my other questions. And when we look at this plan, are we looking at this as one restaurant, or is this a multi-unit complex similar to the Starbucks drive-through with an Aspen Dental and a third retailer across the street?
Yeah, possibly 3.
Okay. And then I'm going to actually share my screen here, and I have another question, and it's going to be more helpful if I pull. Hang on. You can see my screen, right?
Yes, I
Mr.
can.
Saunders? Okay.
Yes.
When one of the concerns I have, and it's just going to be easier for me to show you on a satellite view, is the Chipotle complex here. Their driveway comes right up to their border. So when we look at their property line, it is practically right on it. There's a short distance. I highly suspect their snow gets dumped into here. Now, when we extend this, which I like that connection, by the way, we're leaving very little space here. Where is the snow dumping plan for these complexes in here?
You mean the Westlake Center? Or Chipotle, or
is this the Westlake Center? Is that what you
Yes.
call that? Okay. Yep, that one I'm less concerned about because you just
Yeah.
load it in a giant pile in the parking lot. I'm more concerned about the littler parking lots here. Like, is Chipotle going to push it up to their dumpsters here? Are they going to go backwards on their drive-through? Because there will be no space here because you'll have a road here is what you're proposing, right?
Yes, that's
With
correct.
very little space between you and them.
I believe there's 15 feet.
Yeah, 15 feet is proposed, and also I'll add that that's a separate property, and so the Chipotle, property owner should not be dumping snow on a neighboring property.
No. I guess that Donovan would be their problem.
Is there enough space in there for both of them to have their roads that close together, Donovan?
There's not any zoning code restriction for that.
Okay.
And I mean, the 24 feet width, I believe is big enough for the 2-lane. I asked the fire chief to take a look at this and he just did a quick look. There's not enough information for him to really make any big review based on, he doesn't know, what type of users there are. But like a single story building, he's not concerned about fire access. I'll add that as a note. No, I don't know that Chipotle's snow management plan, snow removal, but that, it should not include, relocating into a neighboring property.
Okay. Awesome.
Right.
That answers that question for me. I do share as we're going through concerns, and that's kind of the point here, Mr. Saunders, for this piece is for us to share our concerns with you so you can mitigate them early on.
Yes.
And have less cost to you as you go through the approval process. And And quite frankly, I think it's great that this property or these two properties are going to be redeveloped because they're not so pretty right now.
Donovan?
To say it bluntly. One of
Donovan?
the,
Mick is on the line there.
Yeah, Mick Roberts here. But the issue with Chipotle's snow removal, they have to haul it off site. They can't be dumping it on the Westlake property center as Westlake owns it now. I mean, a lot of people do that. They haul it off site with a Bobcat dump truck and get rid of it. So
Yeah,
what,
originally, I think Donovan, Westlake was owned by one party. Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah, and yeah, now they're gonna have to figure out a way to get it out.
yeah, it's not like Chipotle can justify dumping the snow on the Westlake property, which we're proposing the access road. I mean, that can't be right. That wouldn't be right. Just-
and thank you, Mick. I was unaware that they had separate ownership now.
yeah.
I didn't realize that. The other comment I had was I share Commissioner Miller's concern with the driveway access on the Broadway facing side, and I would highly prefer that be on the east or west side of the building.
Okay, you know what? You know, we just can't recreate the property. That's the whole thing. This is the best plan that we have in place. We've worked this time and time again, and this is it. Now, the drive-through at Starbucks across the street passes on the north side of the building, yet faces Broadway. So there are cars facing Broadway. So what's the big deal?
If I could, let me share the approved city plan for that. Okay, we have, you know, the reader board and the drive-through window at the rear of the property. I'm
Yes.
sorry, the reader board at the rear of the property, all the stacking behind the building, 3 vehicles basically. And that's my concern around it is that you have what's in the concept plan is, you know, a complete building frontage consisting of vehicles stacked. But here you only have 3 vehicles, and on the west side, there's the window. So basically it is somewhat obscured, you know, as public view and much more opening, much more like inviting presence, I think, to the street. So you have up here, and you have, I'll zero in, what's approved is 20-foot deep parking lots, 20 by 9, and that's the city standard. So
Yeah.
if there's less than 20, that they wasn't built to what was approved by the city.
You're gonna find that to be true.
Well,
I went around the whole parking lot and measured.
yeah, Steve measured it just yesterday. I mean, here we have a piece of property that we have, and it doesn't matter to you folks. We have a bunch of money invested, and we've tried to do this, do that, and this is the best plan that we could possibly come up with and bring something really good to Forest Lake. I know you probably don't care about that, but this is what we're doing.
Mick and Mr. Saunders, I believe I could probably speak for every commissioner here. We're very welcoming of new businesses coming into town and new proposals.
Yeah, I mean,
but we also, and this is me speaking, we also want to make sure that we're setting our community up for a position that it looks nice and it's welcoming and it fits the standards that we've set forth. And one of the pieces, and this is why we have this part where we have this like sketch drawing. It's like a napkin drawing, and it's supposed to be early feedback to you, not feedback after you've gone way into the development phase, but so that we can give you this feedback so that you can make realignments and adjustments. And one of the pieces of feedback I heard from another commissioner, and I'm sharing it, and you could certainly ask the other commissioners if they have the same thing, is that stacking in front of the building is visually less appealing than it is on the side.
all right, Here's the deal.
Certainly, Mick, hang on a second. So certainly you can present whatever you want to us, but that is one of the things that for me would be more appealing than something else. And so if there's a point where you fit every standard that we have and we allow stacking in the front, and honestly, I don't know if we allow stacking in the front or not on that specific property right off the top of my head. But if you're looking for other exceptions or other modifications, you know, and you find a way to make that piece appealing, I might be more inclined to allow you to do other pieces on there that might be more beneficial to you down the road in the process.
Here's the deal.
So,
I want the commission to go over to 19th Street and have all the car dealerships move their cars to the back end of the buildings. Does that make sense?
okay, Mick, we're talking about your property specifically. The car dealerships is another property.
Well, now, why? We have like 6 cars passing in front on Broadway through the drive-through. I mean, I don't get it. I just don't get it.
Okay, I'll be done giving you feedback if that's what you wish. Other commissioners, do you have feedback or questions of the applicant? Commissioner Keen.
At first, I thought the drive-through was on the front of the building with that little box there. But then as we progress through this, I see that the actual drive-through window is on the west side, but all the car stacking is along the front. Mick, is there any way you could, that's the restaurant part of your building. If you put in 3 sections, is there any way to put the restaurant on the right side where they come down on the west side, back by the dumpster, place their order, and then head out? That's just a little feedback.
We haven't really looked at that yet. We've tried to create this a wonderful building and businesses on Broadway that will please the city of Forest Lake and the community. So no, we have not done that. But you can only do so much with what we have.
Yes.
I mean, you can't reinvent the wheel.
No, but you've got a restaurant on the left side, nothing in the middle, put the restaurant on the right side. It's just an idea.
But yeah, but it's the best way traffic will flow.
Commissioner Batty, I saw your hand up next.
Yeah, I guess I'm not, I think there's good possibilities as I look at this. I just, I would encourage you, one thing to look at instead of, an open air pond, can you do a subterranean stormwater retention system? But I wasn't thinking about the drive lane. I was thinking about having the pond out in front and maybe a way to rework that. But why the 65 parking stalls? Is that what are you trying? I guess I'd be interested in knowing what you're trying to achieve there. Is it being driven by the square footage of building that you want to build? The type of uses? I'm just trying to get my arms around that. I guess I think that we're going to be able to work out a traffic flow on this plan. But I was just curious, what's driving the amount of parking? Is there a particular type of use that demands that much parking?
Yes, restaurants definitely do. Commissioner, we had the opportunity, Chipotle really wanted to go on this site and we just couldn't get it designed properly with an ingress egress to the south. Or actually backing up, Donovan, you probably remember we were trying to go through actually the parking lot of Superamerica. And that was just hideous. It just didn't work. So as Donovan knows, the property was sold, Lake Center shopping center. And I mean, the people are just very, very excited about this. They think this is just the silver bullet for their property and our property. to really keep traffic flowing. And I think they're right. And these people have been in business many, many years, 100 shopping centers. And they said this is the best plan, the best idea they've seen. So I understand mixed frustration too. And when somebody made a comment of putting it on a napkin, you know, there's $78,000 in this drawing.
Yeah.
Believe me, it's not on a napkin.
No, I'm not, I guess I don't know how much you watch planning commission meetings, but I'm very, very much pro-development. I'm in the business of problem solving, making
Yes.
things work, getting buildings built. I
Yeah.
tell people I'm an architect, but my job is getting buildings built. And on the plan, same thing on the planning commission. We want to figure out a way to make this work without, and so that it works for you and you maximize the development of the site. I was just curious, I'm kind of interested to know. I'll probably go and figure it out myself. Where we are as far as the site coverage, the 80% site coverage. I'm not worried about that because I know, even a relatively minor amount of space around the perimeter of a site adds up fairly quickly.
Yes.
And I share your frustration on this sewer. How on earth that sewer, I would be embarrassed.
Yeah.
If I was a city engineer and
I know.
ran a sewer in that configuration. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen.
Dennis, that was put in back in 1968 and the city approved it right after TCF Bank. You're talking about the utilities under our property, correct?
Yeah, I was just, that's just.
I mean, whoever approved that should have been shot. They could have done something differently there.
Yeah, but is that, is that limiting you? Is that, if you had your druthers, would you move the building back away from Broadway?
Well, the deal is we can't with the ponding up front and the drive-through. It's impossible. So what we could do is, Donovan, that is a water line that encroaches on the southwest corner of the building.
It appears the easement does, but without a certificate of survey, we can't really verify that.
So it's a water line, correct?
It is water and sewer in that area.
But they're far enough apart. I think the water passes to the north. It cuts the corner on the southwest corner of the building.
Yes.
Yeah, but that's such a minor cut there. I would think we can figure something out there.
Yeah, Dennis, you're an architect, correct?
Yeah.
Have you ever designed a restaurant with a drive-through on the front facing the main thoroughfare?
I've been racking my brain on that, and I don't know that we necessarily have, but restaurants aren't my strong suit. We have done them from time to time, but.
Have you ever had opposition to that? If you have done it?
I don't recall it ever being a major issue. Is there, I'm still trying to figure out, is there another, so what I'm seeing here, what does the dashed line represent on that east drive there? Is that just, are you indicating a drive up window on that side?
Drive up window.
What is that?
A pass by.
Oh, yes.
It's a pass.
Okay. All
Well,
right.
people think they're gonna go through the drive-through and they don't want to take the time or whatever they want to do, they can just stay to the right and just exit going eastbound.
So
also, I wanted to mention, no, I'm sorry, go ahead, sir.
Well, the other thing this whole thing with the two entrances off of Broadway. I'm just,
there's only one.
Well, okay, so,
Yeah, there's only one.
well,
And
right, so it would have to be an inn for,
Yes.
right, when you're saying an entry, yeah, right, an entrance.
Yeah,
But
but-
you have two exits. You have the,
Yes.
you also have the exit in the northeast corner there.
And then Dennis, two right turns out eastbound. That's why we're proposing to circulate traffic to have this access road from the Westlake Center. That will help a lot.
I wanted to also add, we tried also to work with Super America Speedway on joining the curb cut on the north. And they just, there's a private property owner that owns the real estate, and Speedway Corporation owns the business. And the owner is just not very accommodating at all.
That's really strange because it could improve, it could.
Oh,
it could
tremendously.
improve their situation immensely there.
Yes, yes, I totally agree.
Yeah, that would have been a good fix because we proposed a cross easement between Speedway's building and the car wash.
Yep.
But they thought it would interfere with the stacking for the car wash, so that was shot down by Speedway.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That would be Mick is talking about the south end of their actual building and the north end of the car wash.
car wash. What, north side of the car wash?
In the end, they didn't want to do it. So then we went to Plan B, and that was with Westlake Center, and it's better than the other. It's a good deal.
So I'm sharing the basically the city map of what where those utilities are with the fire hydrant there.
Yep.
Shown in red. And you know, I know Mick wants to commit some murder around that, but at the time, these are all single family homes. And this made sense given that these were simply backyards and probably might have been driven more by simply elevation and making sure the gravity sewer worked. And, you know, that's what I can guess about that.
Yes.
This has been the condition, you know, since then at that time. And
Well-
of course, the condition of the property at, you know, as, you know, you, Mick and Steve bought it.
Yeah.
I'll
Going
tell
back years ago to the council meeting, I asked the city engineer, and he really didn't have an answer on why, when they revamped West Broadway, why they didn't straighten out the sewer. And of course, there was no answer.
I can give you an answer.
Steve, 1968.
Yeah.
Commissioner Young, go ahead.
When Broadway was redone, just getting the dollars for the work that was done on Broadway and on 12th took every bit of hair change and in the city council chair cushions that the city had. Trying to relocate those lines would have been a huge, massive undertaking that was completely beyond the scope of the city to do.
Yeah, so Susan, we are paying for it now.
In addition to Commissioner Young's comments, not only would it have been at enormous cost, it very well may, if I were to guess, it very well may have caused the Broadway project to take another year and cause additional business shutdowns for numerous businesses on Broadway, significantly longer.
You know, here's the deal. In my estimation, it was a good old boys decision, quite honestly. Back in 1968, the interstate came through Forest Lake, and so things were done not on top.
I can't speak to what happened in 1968. It was roughly 10 years before my birth. I don't think anybody on our current council, on our staff, was around in 1968. So it just is what it is.
Yeah.
Mick, there's nothing we can do about that.
No. Eric, it was a good time.
I'm sure it was. I'm sure it was.
I got married in 67. It was a good time.
I will tell you
Well,
Oh,
that
you know, and Commissioner, you know, just looking at the site plan right now, who back then, probably, I'm guessing in 1970 roughly, Planning Commission Council would ever pass putting a building smack dead on utilities?
It-
That's the TCF, which was originally the Holiday Gas.
Holiday Station. And then,
So I really want to get back to the sketch plan
Yeah,
review.
yeah, yeah.
Like I am happy to sit down with you and hash out all the idiotic things that happened decades
Yeah.
ago.
Yeah.
But it's for another time. We're really here to talk about the sketch plan review.
Yeah.
So
Eric, we don't have a problem here.
okay.
We just don't have a problem here. The problem seems to be the stacking of the drive-through facing Broadway. And like I said, go over on 19th and tell all the car dealers to move the cars to the back because it's tightly.
Okay. So we're going to move back to the Broadway Avenue retail sketch plan review that we're on right now. And the whole purpose of this, and perhaps staff didn't explain what a sketch plan review is, and I called it a napkin review. It's because it's literally titled a sketch plan review.
Yeah.
The whole purpose of this is so that we can give you kind of unedited, open feedback. So that it is early on in your process. And so I would really urge you to be welcoming of the feedback versus combative. I'm sensing that you want to argue every point that commissioners make. And I think some of them are making points. Whether you make all of them work in your project or not, hopefully it makes your project later on when you present us a preliminary or a final product that we will then be voting on, you've got a better shot at passing it. That's why we have this process. I'll call it a napkin review, but it's technically called a sketch plan review. That's what's on our agenda.
Yeah.
Other
Eric,
commissioners,
thank you for that. That's good. I agree.
Other commissioners, do you have feedback or questions of the applicant here?
Yeah.
Commissioner Keen.
Well, I see that he moved from his first plan, the dumpster over on the west side, over to the east side. And he wants to put in the, anyway, when the big trash truck comes, is going to be coming in on the west side, trying to get through the parking lot, if it's full of cars, 65 cars, then making that sharp turn south just to empty the dumpster. Then he's got to back up and either go all the way around to go out on the east side, or he's going to have to back up down one of those parking lanes and then head out, since it's one way in and one way out. So that's just a.
Mike, if you know trash service, they come early in the morning and there won't be 65 cars in the parking lot. Come on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Come on. They don't come around my house before 7. And most businesses open up around 7 or 8, correct?
Yeah, usually on commercial.
It's just an idea. That's all.
Yeah. Well.
Okay.
Other comments from commissioners? Commissioner Young.
We are not going to be the final arbiter on your pond, but that pond is going to be full of snow throughout the winter, and it's not going to provide you with a great deal of space for water come spring and early summer with the rains. And so I'm not sure why you decided on that. I think that Commissioner Batty had a very good idea for you. I'm just kind of worried about the functioning of that, but the watershed district will be the final, and a city engineer will be the final arbiter on that.
Susan, you're addressing a problem that will not exist. We'll have it hauled off site.
And And you'll be able to put that into. I will look forward to seeing that commitment.
We'll haul it out to Carlos Avery. I don't know.
We'll talk to the engineers.
Are there other comments or feedback from commissioners? Donovan, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to see some pedestrian connection to Broadway. There's a trail there. And like to be for pedestrians to be able to walk up to the, to the structure.
I think that's a good point. I share that as well. Are there other comments, or Donovan, is there anything else that you're looking for us to provide or give feedback on tonight?
No. I mean, I think you've accurately described it as a sketch plan. There's some things for the applicant to consider. I think that, this has been a robust conversation.
All right, thank you. Mr. Saunders or Mr. Roberts, is there any other specific details that you're looking for from our commission tonight?
Yes.
We would love to have your blessings. We want something good for Forest Lake and the community. And
Yep, so we do.
We're investing in the community.
And I'm pleased that you are. We do not ever take votes on sketch plan reviews. It's an opportunity for informal feedback. So
Sure.
if you gather that feedback, you may or may not feel that you got our blessing tonight, but we don't actually make any official motions on this.
Well,
It's very informal conversation.
Yeah.
So was there anything specific that you wanted feedback on the plan that you're looking for from us tonight?
Well, yes, the two things that I'm very concerned about leaving this Zoom meeting is the Starbucks facing Broadway and it's just, I'm upset. So my mind's not working right. Oh, the stacking. I think it's very adequate. I know the architect tomorrow is going to be very surprised at some of the comments. She's done a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Mainly what she focalizes on is restaurants.
Well, thanks, Commission. It was fun.
I am going to share my screen because I have this literally on my desktop. I don't want to sit and talk about this, but you want to keep bringing it up. Starbucks is here. They have their drive-through on the side of the building here. The entire front of the building is a facade. So it has doors and it's very welcoming. So all of their cars are stacked up on the side. I don't think anybody cares that there's a couple of cars on the side here. What we're concerned about is when you're going to load up in the front of the building, and it appears from your sketch drawing that the loading point or the ordering point is in the front of the building, which is less appealing. At least that's my viewpoint. I think if you could either move the point where somebody is ordering on one side of the building, and on perhaps the east side makes the most sense, and on the west side is where the drive-through pickup is, then you might have a couple cars across the front. I would be less concerned about that than handing out bags of food directly onto Broadway. I would rather see a building facade on facing Broadway. That's my viewpoint. Whether that's in our standards or not, I honestly don't know, but that's my feedback, and I think that was Commissioner Miller's feedback earlier as well.
Eric, we don't have an additional $150,000 to move the utilities. So that's why we propose a building as shown. And maybe you have to move the water to the southwest a little bit. That's why it was proposed that way. Unless someone wants to come up with $150K and help us out.
This commission does not have a budget.
I understand.
We are designed to give feedback and consider applications as they come through. So is there anything else specific that you're looking for from us on this project?
I appreciate everybody your time. Really.
Yeah, I do as well. I do as well.
All right. Thank you. There was nothing else from commissioners, correct?
Nope, nothing else.
All right. All right, we'll move on to item number 10, other business, and we will start with Council Member Gerard.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I really thought that you guys would be done about 8:30, 8:45, so I appreciate you guys hanging in here till 10:30 at night. I have no updates, ironically, because of the way to Wednesdays fall. We haven't met except on the budget since the prior planning commission meeting. But I'd be happy to answer any questions if anybody has any. Otherwise, I'll just be quiet.
All right, any questions from commissioners? I don't see any. Thank you, Councilmember Gerard. Donovan, do you have any updates?
We do have planning commission agenda for next meeting. I think we'll be discussing more zoning district standards, and as you probably gathered from some of the Minnesota Lake self-storage comments, that they did get the grading permit and began some of the grading, grubbing and grading for that site. Also this week,
I know it.
Headwaters 12th also opened.
I'm gonna take you over your house someday. I mean, we won't go in.
Kieran, can you unmute Mick? Thanks. So the Headwaters 12th edition also started construction this week. So those 19 lots, so they're looking to get those coming online. And that's it for me. I'm happy to take any questions from the Planning Commission.
Questions for Donovan? See none. Thank you, Donovan. Karen, did you have any updates for us tonight?
I do not have any updates.
All right, thank you. Commissioners, let's try to keep it brief so we don't have to extend past 11. I'll go around the room. Commissioner Miller,
I have nothing.
Commissioner Brink,
I just wanted to point out that back in 1922, there was a horse and buggy that did a drive-through there in that restaurant. And so that kind of sets precedence, but whoever opened up a restaurant instead of a restaurant, that person should be shot. That's all for me.
that's an interesting opinion and it's fitting of other business. Was there anything additional, Commissioner Brink? Nothing? Okay, it's Commissioner Young. Nothing. Commissioner Keen,
Nothing.
Commissioner Batty.
Nothing.
I have nothing additional. That moves us into item number 11, adjournment. Is there a motion? Commissioner Miller moves. Is that a second, Commissioner Keen?
Second.
It's a non-debatable motion. Karen, can you please take a roll call vote?
Sure, give me 1 second here. Commissioner Young,
Commissioner Young, you're on mute.
Aye.
Commissioner Batty,
Aye.
Commissioner Miller,
I
Commissioner Keen,
Aye.
Commissioner Brink,
Aye.
Chair Langness.
Aye, motion carries. Thank you. Meeting's closed. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Thank you for your time.